much. I call this meeting to order for Tuesday, April the 19th, 2016 at 6 p.m. We should start with the flag salute. I'll do it. Please put your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you like to say invocation?
Father God, we do thank you for allowing us to be here tonight and to discuss the donation policy. It's a very important policy for our community because our nonprofits and our schools are able to get money to help with their programs, and that's why it's very important to the community and to the council that when they discuss it, to do what is right for the community. And Father, we just thank you for the staff and the council members that are here tonight. And with anybody that's not here, just be with them tonight, Father, and just keep your loving arms around them. And we thank you in thy holy name. Amen.
Roll call.
Councilmember Rios.
Present.
Councilmember Tremble.
Here.
Councilmember Arvilla.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Here.
And Mayor Bruce asked to be excused.
Yes. Okay, we'll start with the oral communications. This is the time reserved for members of the public wishing to speak on items on the agenda, except for the public hearing items. This period will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Maximum time allocated is 15 minutes. Upon conclusion of oral communications, the City Council or City staff, at the direction of the Mayor, may respond to any questions or statements that were presented by members of the public. The City Council is prohibited by law from discussing or taking any action on items presented during oral communications. They are not on the agenda. So do we have any members of the public that would wish to speak?
Good evening, members of the council, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. I'm Carolyn Kobayashi. I'm the Assistant Regional Administrator for the County of Los Angeles Public Library, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for your donation that we received last week during the council meeting for the Hawaiian Gardens Library. The funds that you generously donated to us will be used to purchase additional materials to support the collection, to supplement it, that we might be able to provide more up-to-date materials that the students can use for their STEM and their STEAM programs. But again, I'd like to thank you for your continued generosity and your support.
Thank you.
Pedro Amaro, Britain Street, Hawaiian Gardens. I know that the city is very generous when they hand out these donations, and it helps out a lot of people. But my question is, can anybody come in and request a donation, personal or otherwise? Can anybody come from a business and ask for a donation, or does it just have to be somebody that's a nonprofit, a school, or like the library? That's my question. I'm just wanting to see if I can get an answer to that, because at times people in the community also may need a little bit of help, and I'm just wondering if the council hands out donations for anybody. That's the question.
Thank you. I see nobody else, so we'll close the oral communications. And so now we'll proceed for any questions from the City Council or our staff. So if anybody has any questions, the time is now. Or, do you want to address his question? Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Just to respond to your question, the current requirements provide for service clubs, civic organizations within the city, or nonprofit organizations within the city, and most of the requirements deal with funding for a specific project.
Well, my understanding is that we're meeting to discuss the donation policy because the mayor requested that an ad hoc committee be formed, and I was on that ad hoc committee with him, and we proposed a couple of changes in which a lot of questions came about, and so we suggested to have this special call meeting in order for us to collectively make a decision on changes to the donation policy. But being that Barry isn't here, I'm not quite sure then why we're meeting.
I can answer that. Barry said he looked over the policy, and I guess he says there's really nothing much you can do with it. So, no, but mainly his reason for not being here is because he has other meetings and events he has to attend to. But we do have a quorum here, and we can make the decisions.
And if I may, part of the reason that when he called, he also left me a message, but part of the reason that we were going to this forum was that the two committee members had met and made some changes, but during discussion, other council members had thoughts and concerns about the way it was worded. So this is the opportunity for everyone else to participate. The mayor has provided a lot of his input, so now we want to get everyone else's input so that we can fix the things that people believed were not appropriate. So it's to get more input, not just his.
Well, I appreciate the library being here and letting us know how the money is going to be used. It's always awesome to know where all those monies are going. Thank you for that. And I know that anything you do in that library benefits our residents in the community. In regards to Pedro, I know that your question was answered, I hope. I'm also very concerned because it has been like a very long day, and it's part of our duties to serve the community and do our best to be here and present. And this particular item that we're doing, aside from our regular council meeting duties, is something that was requested by Mr. Bruce. He went ahead and created a committee with Ms. Maravilla, and it seemed that when the matter was brought forth at the council meeting, he wasn't even aware what the new application process was. It seemed that Ms. Maravilla was presenting recommendations, and he himself was questioning some of his committee's presentations. So I'm kind of bothered that I'm making the time to be here to work with him, to iron out the details of the committee, to take into consideration his concerns, because he keeps bringing it up. He brought it up the first year I was in council, brought it up the second year I was in council. He brings it up again this year. And to not be here, it seems that it's not conducive to what we needed to get done today.
If the committee has no change, if we as a council have no changes, I would like to table this item indefinitely.
Well, I would like to bring to the table the fact that in the old policy, whether you want to change anything else, the old policy says that the way you provide donations is through reimbursement. People provide you with receipts and you pay them for those receipts. Do you want to leave that? And if so, we should start to enforce the policy in that manner. If you do not want that, then that is one thing that you need to discuss about changing.
So it's not. Where exactly is that in the old application process?
It's in the policy itself. If you look on page, let me find it here. Funding, okay, look at page 4. Well, that's the schools. Was it paragraph 4?
Paragraph 4 of the second page of the policy.
Yes, the funding, right. If you read that, it says funding shall, page 11, page 11. Funding shall be provided to awardees as reimbursement for actual expenditures or invoiced expenses, and upon proof that expenditures were made as outlined in the donation application. Such proof will be provided to the satisfaction of the city administrator. Well, it's an old policy.
It's an old policy. Can I give my input?
That's what everybody is here for.
I know that Myra Maravilla and Barry Bruce spent hours on this new policy. And I know Barry has also talked with you with his concerns, and he knows this policy inside out, just like Myra Maravilla does. And I believe that this session here was mostly meant for Rios, Rodriguez, and Trimble to catch us up to see if we have any changes that we'd like to bring out, and then we can discuss it and vote on it either today or at a later time. So I'd like to see it. I'd like to hear it and voice my opinion on it.
There was already the new policy, the new proposal was already given to you, so we needed to have reviewed it before the meeting. I do have many questions to the new provided policy, and I know that the old policy has been questioned quite a bit. And we reviewed it 2 years ago with, you weren't here and Ms. Maravilla wasn't here, and it was still approved at that particular moment. So if the intent of the changes are proposed by a council member, then the least the council member can do is be here to present or indicate what the changes are for. Ms. Maravilla has a motion on the table to table it indefinitely to keep her old policy. Thank you, Linda, for bringing that up. As I understand, just normal routine, Mr. Rodriguez can correct me on this, we provide the people the checks. Is that correct, as far as right now? Yes. The problem, though, is this old policy is just for reference. The agenda item, what does the agenda item reflect?
To make changes to this policy.
To the new policy that is proposed.
I believe it says discuss the donation policy. It's not to, what was brought to the council was an effort to give a new donation policy to take into effect or into account things that wanted to be changed. That's when the donation policy committee put that together. When it was brought to the council, questions were raised about what was in that policy. So then we come back to, do you want to go with this new policy with just some minor changes? Do you want to stay with the old policy and maybe make a few changes to that? That's what the purpose of this was, is to try and understand what is the council's directive on this.
Well, can we go item per item on the changes only? I mean, can we look at the old and then look at the new one and look at the old? So we don't have the new.
The new ones are here.
Is that page 9?
This is the one I thought we were going over.
14?
Page 14. And there are a few changes that the committee discussed that haven't been put into this. One of those being the commission versus a committee. Because at that point, we could tell that there was not a consensus. So rather than try to rewrite it again, that section was left. But that was one of the big questions that came up, was whether or not you need a finance commission.
Well, and I appreciate your recommendation in regards to that particular item, Linda. I mean, as I see with this new policy that is being proposed, there's a reduction in regards to eligibility from 75% of Hawaiian Gardens residents to 50% now. The problem is I don't see the discretion. As you recall last week, Mr. Trimble wanted to include Palms Elementary, and in regards of percentages, that's not even close. Yet the need was deemed appropriate, and so we supported that particular action. Is that discretion in this new policy?
Well, if you look at this, this is the one for nonprofit organizations. Another one based on this basic format would be developed for the schools, but the school one needed less change than the nonprofit. The school one is more about, I don't think there's anything in there about they have to have a certain number of students or any percentage. That's in the back of the current policy. You'll see that, the current policy. There is a section related to schools.
It includes them, right?
Yes, and there is no guideline in that section.
There's no differentiate.
No, about how many students you have to have. So there is nothing in the school. This new policy is just related to the first part of this policy, which is nonprofits. And one of the big changes that was brought up was to allow this to include nonprofits that are of a religious nature, churches that are nonprofits. So that was one big change that came into this, and where we ran into issues there was the language for how do you make sure that it's not being used for lack of a better word, religious purposes, that they're not using it for providing religious teachings. And so that was an issue. I think the other thing was the Finance Commission idea and who's going to approve it. I think those were the big issues that people had. The rest of it, there was a question about asking for certain pieces of information, and those can be modified to be more in line with what was discussed. But other than that, I don't think there are a lot of major changes between the two in terms of just the application process.
I would just keep the old policy and then revise what you brought up. I reviewed it, and I didn't even see it. So I'm glad that you, as the financial administrator for our city, has noted that. I know we had an extreme discussion about percentages of residents, 75%, 50%, and we already went through the whole debate. But I appreciate that there's at least a note in there that there's a discretion of the council. The council gets to decide what is of need to the community. So that's allowable in there.
So in reviewing,
Go ahead. I'll go next.
in reviewing page 11 of the old policy, I would like to review or strike out the first bullet and perhaps change that with something that does not require reimbursement.
Do you have that on the new one, on the new policy?
No, we don't discuss reimbursement, I don't think, no. They will.
It only asks for them to apply, and they can apply for a certain amount of money, and then you would give them that amount of money. There is some of the language that is in the new policy that was in there is that this was under additional requirements, page 15 at the bottom. One of the things that the committee did bring up was to add some additional requirements in here, which actually the old policy has some of that also, which is to have them do a presentation for the council to show how they're using the money. And it is in this policy. We haven't actually required them to do that either.
Mm-hmm. That's the old policy we have.
That's what I said, in the old policy. But we haven't really enforced,
already, right?
We haven't
it's already
even
included, then it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, no, but we haven't really enforced that.
Well, enforcement, right, enforcement and actual policy is different. I understand. In regards to this, providing invoices for expenditures and stuff, I mean, even us, to get reimbursed for any event, it's like, okay, let's keep my receipts in track and everything. That to me seems excessive, and we haven't been implementing it. To me, that seems something that's doable, because I didn't notice that the last time we reviewed this application. And Ms. Maravilla is part of the committee. She's agreeing to the change. Can we go ahead and move on that for the old application? Mr. Trimble, you had something to say?
Yes, I had something to say. With the wording on this, and then it's up to the city administrator to give the final word, and then another section says this, and this, and then it's up to council. I would like to have the wording give us set boundaries where it's not on council, it's on the boundaries, it's on the document, and same with pressure off of you as the administrator or director. It would just be everything is on this. If you comply with this and we have the money, it's a yes. It's not do all this and then it's up to us, because that causes grievance, it causes favoritism. I would just rather see it black and white, and if you check all the boxes and we have money, then it's a yes.
So any application given to our city clerk, Sue, you're just saying it's automatically going to be approved if they meet all the qualifications?
It goes to the city manager first, and then they give the information to bring it to the council.
Right, but if you're hearing Mr. Trimble, he's I think he's recommending when the application's submitted, if everything is on the application, then just grant them the money? Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
I'm saying this, come up with a policy, and if they fit that criteria, then yes, bring it to us, and if we have the finances, and you have 50%, 75% of the kids, whatever it calls for, then you're eligible, and there's nothing that can stop
Well, that's
If-
what we
like,
do now.
If they
So-
meet everything, we can't say no.
So
Because they met our need.
would it, is what you're looking at to set up a policy that you budget a certain amount and
Mm-hmm.
then people apply and somebody, staff approves it, and then it would just be presented to you that it was being, going to be processed?
Yes,
So that
because
you're
in
not really
this
approving or
policy that they-
disproving it?
I'm sorry, Linda.
I'm
Go
s-
ahead.
yeah.
I'm
No,
sorry.
you're not approving the donation. What you're approving is an amount of a donation,
Mm-hmm.
like you have a maximum of 5,000 for a person or a group. You have these certain criteria that they have to meet, and as long as they meet that criteria, staff would do the review, whatever staff we set up to review it, and as long as it all matches, that could be processed and then just brought to the council as a note that this has been issued, and have them come and pick it up?
Yes, and it's stated in here, as long as the finances, the donation policy has the funds in it, it's granted. But I firmly want to stick with that, because if there's no money in the donation bucket, we can't do nothing else. We can't go into our reserve if we give all our money away during the year. And that's one thing with this new budget I want to stick to. So I like this new policy, except for one thing on it, that I'll bring out later. But I think it's very, it's put together well. And I have no problem with it, except for this one issue. I think I did a good job on it. I think it restricts them more than the last policy. The last policy had a lot of loose ends in it. This one kind of tightens it up. This one looks more professional.
Well, the committee put
You
in
did
a
a good
lot of
job on it.
time. The committee put in a lot of time to
They
try
did.
and develop a policy that they thought would be good, improve what you had, but still provide for being able to give to the community, because that's obviously the goal. Whether they hit that mark or not is something that you all need to discuss and decide, and whatever the council decides is then the step that we'll take.
Mr. Trimble, I think he's talking about something that we already do. Miss Sue, Miss Underwood, you were going to say something?
Yes, if I might. We have a fireworks policy, and the fireworks policy, when they come to get the permission for the stands, we have a form, and they have to bring every single item on that form, or we don't accept their policy, their request. And after the fireworks stand is over, they have to come back and send us a budget in that shows us exactly where the money went from the fireworks stand, and shows everything that they had to put out, like for generators and all that stuff. But that way, then, because if they don't turn that in, we tell them you may not get a fireworks stand the following year, because that's the finalization of our fireworks permit process. And the thing is, right now, the way these work, the reason they come to the council, I mean, generally, if they come in, it's the basic donations, the school donations and the nonprofit donations. The council has always generously given to those. And so I'd always give them to the city manager, and he'd give them back to me to put on the agenda, more for the council to know what's going on. And then we always don't give the check out until the following meeting for the PR portion of it, because the council is generous in giving monies out. And so it's worked well, but there are certain things that need to be tightened up, of course, on any policy. But there's another issue. You could just pick out the ones that we always give to, figure out the money, give so much money, keep the rest for other areas. You know, there's other ways of doing it. But, okay, Lucy.
If I may just add one more thing.
Sorry.
Currently, with our fireworks permit, which is the example we're using, our department processes it based on the application, but the application already reflects all the requirements per the municipal code. So all of their documentation has to be in, all of the sections have to be completely filled out, even for us to be able to receive it and review it and process it. At that time, our duties as staff is to review it, make sure that everything is in compliance per the ordinance, which is the application that's made up. And then we prepare the staff report and resolution that comes back to the council for final approval. So at that point, staff is basically making a recommendation, and in cases in the past, we had actually recommended denial because they did not fully comply, and as staff members, we did not have the authority other than to deny it based on that. And our staff report reflected the reasons why we were recommending denial on any particular one. But the council always had the discretion and the authority to, go against staff's recommendation. And we were simply making the recommendation based on the requirements of the ordinance and filling out the application.
Yes.
So that may be something that can be done here.
And if everything checked out, then you would recommend a yes. And that's what I'm saying. Let's not give everybody a yes and then leave it up to a certain person or a certain group to give the final approval, because it's, final approval, yes. If it's all in order, it will be a yes.
Well, in terms of what you're recommending is already being done. You don't bring applications to council that have not been approved or
yes, they do.
Checked.
They can
you have
go
brought
with the
applications.
non-recommendation.
You've brought applications that are incomplete to the council?
No, we give them to the city manager, and the city manager is the one who determines whether they are able to go to the council or not.
Right, and each recommendation has a staff recommendation as to what the fiscal impact is. I've reviewed every single application. Every single one we reviewed this application, this is what's met. And in regards to our most recent one, there was an issue, and it was brought up in the staff report, clearly. So it seems that what we're doing is already in place. Again, we can go ahead and change that, Linda, in terms of making sure that we're applicable to it.
Could we go section by section? For instance, can we look at page 9 and page 14? That way we're comparing side by side the old and the new recommendations. I know for purpose, there is an additional clause in the new section that I do think is good. The City of Hawaiian Gardens recognizes the importance of community organizations which provide benefits for the city residents. The city wishes to establish a comprehensive policy outlining the application process and criteria. And there's just one more line. And I know previously it didn't include all that information. Would you guys like to include or accept the new purpose?
Instead of page 9, the old purpose that was there, to
Yeah.
establish a comprehensive policy outlining the application process.
Mm-hmm.
That seems fine with me.
So I need a timeout. I don't have the same papers.
I think
It's in the red folder.
You're comparing page 9 to 14?
I don't have
Yes.
page 9.
He doesn't seem to have the applications that we were given in our report.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And can we get the Word document on the projector so we can strike out or keep or copy and paste it so we can see the final product before we approve?
I'll take good notes, and then I
Okay.
can make corrections and draft up the resolution that would accompany it.
Okay.
And a record of the meeting is being made, so we can, if there's a discrepancy, we can go
always
ahead and
check.
review it.
Yes.
So,
So the old purpose is out, the new purpose is in.
yes.
Wait, let me see that. Let's read that again. I'm on the same page now.
So we're looking at page 9 and page 14, and essentially it's pretty much similar information, except there is an additional sentence. Well, it's just a little bit reworded.
And read it? Oh.
Right now we're just looking at purpose.
So,
just
so
the-
the,
Oh, okay, and this is the new,
Yeah.
okay.
so the additional sentence there, could you please read that one? Amara?
Yeah, so the new purpose would read, the City of Hawaiian Gardens recognizes the importance of community organizations which provide benefits for the city residents. The city wishes to establish a comprehensive policy outlining the application process and criteria for the various forms of monetary donations provided by the city. Are we all okay with keeping the new section of the purpose?
I like it.
I'm okay.
Okay,
That's
so
fine
we'll
with
keep
me.
that, and then we'll move over to procedure. It looks like before it was a little bit vague, and we sort of combine procedure with eligibility and extended eligibility. So we'll look at objectives next on the new policy, page 14. Do you guys like that?
I have a legal comment on that. For the third line where it says provide guidelines and standards, I think that guidelines suggest that it's vague and that these can be altered. And I think if you're attempting to set something that is a strict policy you want to adhere to, then you should just remove the word guidelines and keep standards.
So we'll strike out guidelines and,
Yes.
Yes.
and it'll read provide standards for donation contributions from the city.
Yes.
What's wrong with the procedure language?
For the
City of
third,
Hawaiian Gardens receives requests for funds from community and other organizations for specific projects or activity. This policy will provide the guidelines under which the city will consider requests for city funds and the procedures for making such request.
So I think
I mean,
if we're looking at the new one, that it appears that procedure was removed and objectives replaced it.
yeah, there's no.
Are we,
I mean, what's.
I guess we should clarify whether we are revising the new or the old.
well, we're comparing each section and determining if we want to keep the old section or the new section. And so I guess we're comparing procedure on page 9 to objectives on page 14.
I mean, it looks like our objective is outlined in the purpose. The city wishes to establish a comprehensive policy outlining the application process. I mean, that is your objective. And the purpose of it. Objective, purpose is pretty much the same thing.
I know that for this section, Linda, you were looking at other policies from other cities, and this was best practice.
This is a way of explaining what it is that your objective is for doing this, that you're trying to make sure that we treat all the
It seems that, I mean, you're, Ms. Carney, you're the lawyer, but ensures that the City of Hawaiian Gardens treats all requests and contributions fairly and responsibly. I mean, why, or do we not do it before? I mean, is there a question as to why, is there a difference in terms of how we, I mean, it just opens up a box to say, am I treated fairly or not fairly? It's just, you're just giving, you're looking at requests and you're just approving the money. It's not about, it's not about fairness or anything. It's about need by the community. What do the residents need?
But we also must realize that any funds that we donate are funds coming from the taxpayers, and we can't just, because somebody wants something here, wants some money for a certain activity, and we just give it to them, and we have done that in the past, and I think this will make it a little bit more reserved on us spending taxpayers' money.
I mean, the taxpayers elected you to represent them, and
exactly.
we're here making decisions.
Exactly.
So this is the actual council that's going to approve the.
This is why
request.
I'm concerned about just giving out.
Well, this doesn't limit, this does not limit what we can approve. This simply says that if we are donating and giving money away, we're doing it fairly and responsibly. And I think that should be in a policy that is talking about money donations.
But what classifies something as responsibly? If the council member votes no, the council member's not being responsible to the policy? I mean, I'm not sure what.
Correct. I like that. Because fairly means we got to stick to what's fair, and what's written is fair. So if they comply with everything written, it's fair that we stick to our agreement and donate to that organization.
So with this language, you're mandating the council to vote yes?
No, but I do like that.
If not, then that person
wording.
would not be acting fairly?
I believe it's holding us accountable to what we're agreeing to.
You're being held accountable by your goal. If you think that a donation's not being fair, I would hope that you would voice your opinion and vote no for it. Right?
Well, so the intent of the objective section, which objectives is a more commonly used term in ordinances or resolutions instead of procedure. However, that doesn't mean that you have to use the word objective, but it is displaying the intent of the actions by council. It's not creating a binding sentence that you have to act fairly, because there is not, I think in this, you're correct in the sense that every recipient may define fairly differently, especially if they get a different amount of money. However, my comment is specific to either one, that guidelines creates a question about the enforceability.
Right. But, I mean, that's our job as council members. So you're criticizing your own job as a council member as to how you're being treated fairly or not. I don't see why this language needs to be in there. It just opens up for the organizations to come forward and say, I wasn't treated fairly.
Well,
when
no.
we are already treating them, if the application was submitted correctly, if it was reviewed by the administrator, there's a certain report, it's now up to the council to determine whether those funds are going to be allocated or not, because that's what the council was elected to do.
Well, this is fairly. We had 2 examples of fireworks stand. One fireworks stand got recommended by staff to be approved. One fireworks stand got recommended not to be approved. It's fair to both of them.
I mean, it's like in an
because they're meeting requirements,
Because
whether they're not
meeting requirements.
But even in a job application through HR, for instance, it always says you're not going to be harassed by sexual orientation, age, race, etc. That doesn't mean that the organization is being racist or is harassing. It's a clause that has to be in there because it's legally binding that we're being, I guess we're being fair and we're abiding by the law.
We should be abiding by the law if you're a public entity. Mr. Rodriguez keeps saying, we're spending taxpayers' money. I think we're talking the same language. It's just...
I do think fairly and responsibly is appropriate for a donation policy when we're discussing money. Because, say, 20 years from now, we get a totally different council. I would like to know that there's language in here making sure that things are done fairly and responsibly. But
what criteria are you using to hold somebody accountable to determine that they are fair?
So this part is stating that this is the intent of the council, and then the remainder of the policy would be the requirements that everyone is supposed to comply with.
I make a motion to keep fair and responsible.
It's not a matter of just supporting it or not. It's a matter of protecting the city as to if there's a council that comes 20 years from now, hopefully that council will represent the needs of the city at that moment of how it looks.
what do you recommend, Kendra?
I think the language in the objectives is where you state your intent, and so if that matches what the intent of the majority is, then those are the words that you can say, and you're not. I don't think that putting it in the intent necessarily brings a question of whether or not it's fair. It's just expressing that is your desire, is for it to be a fair process. If the word fair is bothersome, you could use to treat all applicants equally. You can say something like that if you want different language, but I don't see a legal issue with leaving that as the intent.
Again, it's just language, but how do you treat agency equitably when there's a football team that's requesting $5,000 and there's a school that is requesting $5,000? It's like, is that equitably? If we give the school $10,000, then the football team needs to get $10,000?
It's just equally
it just
according
opens
to the
up
policy
to
rules.
It doesn't say equally, it says fairly. So how about,
I said equally.
So how about
As an
we
alternative.
change it to, so it can read, ensure that the City of Hawaiian Gardens treats all the requests and considers all contributions fairly, period.
But we already do. I mean,
But that's our intention. Our intention is to do this.
Right here, it's very clear. The City of Hawaiian Gardens receives requests for funds from community and other organizations for specific projects and purposes. They are brought to the attention. The policy will provide guidelines under which the city will consider requests for the city funds and procedures for making such request. If that entity does not meet the procedures, then they will not move to the next step. It's very clear. Where is there an issue of fairness or unfairness? I mean, why does this have to be brought into the conversation of you're being brought fairly or not? It's just inherent that there's like some wrongdoing or something.
The intent here is contributions fairly and responsibly. We're responsible to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are.
We're going to have different responses here, but that's why there's 5 of us here. on this. So it doesn't matter. You might think that it's okay, or I might say, no, that's not what we want. But so it's going to be up to us to decide, regardless of what the wording is right here. And I don't understand what is the fairly and responsibly. What is
I
the
mean,
big issue on
my
that?
concern is
What
we're a
the big-
government entity. We're supposed to be acting at all times fairly and equitably. It does not need to be stated in this particular policy that is a change that needs to be made. I mean,
But it doesn't mean
Are
that we
you-
all have to agree with everything, and that's the reason that's the reason we have a city council.
Of course.
Because we're going to agree and disagree on many items. As you've seen throughout the years you've been now as the city council, and we never agreed on everything.
Is our intention to be fair and responsible? Is that our intention when we look at these donation policies? I would agree that yes, even though we may all vote differently and think our priorities are differently, I think as a consensus, we all want to do what's fair and responsible. That is our objective when looking at any application. So I think it is appropriate to keep fairly and responsibly, because that is our objective as a council to do each and every time we look at an application.
I mean, to me, it doesn't have to be stated on here as a part of your responsibility as a council members for you to be fair and equitable at all times.
Well, obviously, we're not going to agree on this.
We're not.
So is there a way that, can we have a vote, or what's going to happen?
Mr. Rodriguez, bring it to a vote with the language.
Yes, you can vote on piece by piece if
Okay.
if there's an issue.
So that would be on the objectives.
The first bullet.
The purpose or the objectives? Which one?
Objectives.
Objectives,
But
which is
objectives and
it says
procedures is what
fairly
we're talking
and responsible. So why don't we take a vote now and proceed on to the next one? So
I would like to
I'm
make a
sorry.
motion to keep the wording fairly and responsible. Responsibility and fairly.
Are you asking
On the
just for
first
that
bullet?
one line, or are you asking for the objectives to be kept? The section called objectives, Kendra had made a suggestion that guidelines and be removed.
Yeah, but we're just
But are
taking that
you-
first bullet right now.
Only the
just the
bullet,
first
not
bullet.
the section.
Okay, well,
the
because if we
objectives
go to
still-
the whole section, then the third bullet, we're going to take out guidelines and just leave standards.
Right.
And-
So are you looking at line by line, or are you looking at that whole
Well,
section?
now that we cleared that up, we can do the whole objective
The whole
section.
objective section.
First, let's look at the second bullet. Ensure uniform standards.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify, is there a motion on the table or no? Was that completed?
I made a motion, but now we're discussing all three. So,
Okay.
So the second bullet reads, ensure uniform standards and procedures respecting the provision and administration of contributions by the city.
I like that.
So everybody agree on that one? We'll proceed to the.
Do you agree on that one, Maria?
I still like the old language procedure.
Uh,
I disagree with the objectives.
So are we going to, okay, so
I'll
we'll
make
go
a,
to the provide standards for donations, contributions from the city. Do we agree on that? And if so, then we can take a
Actually,
vote.
for the second bullet, Ray, I would like to strike out respecting the provision and administration of contributions by the city. I think that's unnecessary because that's more of a guideline than an objective. So I would just like ensure uniform standards and procedures, which is what we
Sure.
do. That's our
And-
objective.
And then you're crossing out,
Respecting the provision and administration of contributions by the city. Do you agree with that?
but isn't that the remainder of this whole report?
the provision and administration of
The
the city.
provision and administration of the contributions?
So
Aren't
can
these
you-
the administration of it?
What is this actually telling us on that?
What if you
What's
just
the
said,
sentence?
oh, sorry. What if you just said, ensure uniform standards and procedures are applied to contributions by the city? Unless you
Administration.
think that that's still,
So we would
I'm not sure.
remove,
Remove-
respecting the provision and administration of contributions by the city?
Yes, and instead put,
Okay.
ensure uniform standards and procedures are applied to contributions by the city.
I like
I
that.
applied to.
Yeah, I like that. I
I
like
like
that too.
We have any discussion? If not so, then we'll,
And then for the first bullet, I would like to make another amendment. So it would read, ensure that the City of Hawaiian Gardens considers all requests and contributions fairly.
considers.
And so strike out treats. Considers all requests and contributions fairly, period. Ensures uniform standards and procedures are applied to contributions by the city and provide standards for donation contributions from the city. Actually, I think the third one is redundant if we look at the second bullet. I would like to strike out the third bullet
That provide.
because
standard
the
for
second one
donation.
pretty much says that. We're ensuring uniform standards and procedures.
Provide standards for, yeah, so provide standards for donation contributions from the city. Is that you want to strike?
Yeah, I
that?
want to strike out the third bullet. So the first one, I would like it to read, ensure that the City of Hawaiian Gardens considers all requests and contributions fairly. And the second bullet would read, ensure uniform standards and procedures are applied to contributions by the city. And that's all.
One final suggestion to that is only to change the word contribution to donation since it's the donation policy.
Donations?
Yes.
Donations, yes.
Okay.
On the first bullet.
On both bullets? So just to make the document uniform?
Yes,
We'll
second
make it
bullet as well.
donations instead of contributions.
Okay, I just had one thing to say. From changing the word treat to consider,
Considers.
since it is a written document, do we consider it or do we treat it?
We consider it.
Do we consider it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then let's consider it.
Okay.
Yes.
Excuse me, Councilmember Maivia, what was the change on the first one again? I'm sorry.
So the first line would read, ensure that the City of Hawaiian Gardens considers all requests and donations fairly. The second bullet,
And responsibly.
I took it out.
Took what out?
And responsibly?
No, that keeps us in line.
We keep ourselves in line. I like fairly.
Fairly and responsibly. That is,
That's what, yeah.
Okay.
There.
If you guys want to, yeah, that's
Yeah, we
fine.
should keep that responsibly because
Yes.
that's what we are.
We are responsible, okay. And then the second line would read, ensure uniform standards and procedures are applied to donations by the city.
and then you want to strike the third bullet.
And I strike that third bullet because it's
Because it
redundant.
kind of
Change
repeats.
contributions
Yes.
to donations.
Okay, so do we vote on the objectives now, or do we have to go through the whole page?
No,
No, we
we
can
just
vote.
vote on the objective. So I'll
Okay.
make a motion to receive.
Can you go ahead and read the whole language before you make the motion? What does it look like now?
Do you want me to read it?
Read it, please.
Objectives. Ensure that the City of Hawaiian Gardens considers all requests and donations fairly and responsibly. Ensure uniform standards and procedures are applied to donations by the city.
Simple.
The third one
Very-
was deleted?
Strike
completely?
that.
We're going to strike it. It no longer exists.
Now, do I have a,
I'll make a motion to receive,
To accept, approve?
to approve the objective section of this document.
what about the purpose? Is that part of it also, or
Oh, we
just?
already said okay on that one
Okay.
as a consensus.
Oh, wait,
I make a motion.
We need a
I'll
second?
second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Say aye. Say aye.
Aye.
Uh-oh,
If you
are we
approve.
telling people to vote a certain way?
I heard this.
Right?
Since I made the motion, that is my aye. Right? If I make a motion,
No.
that's my vote.
No, you still have to vote on
Aye.
it. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if a council member was being told how to vote right now.
What is it? Because when I first started, they told me if you make the motion, that's your vote.
Hank nodded saying that yes. So that's why I
Yes,
said
but
just say it.
It doesn't hurt to say yes ever, also, just to be clear.
Okay, all right.
I have a point of clarification, though, as far as the purpose, in the procedure. Did you say that you're keeping the procedure and the objectives?
In reading the procedure and the objectives, they're completely different. So I think we should keep the procedure.
Okay, then I have the same comment, just that guidelines should be removed, and we should put standards or another word that's stronger.
Do you guys agree that we should keep the procedure?
I do.
Okay.
On the old.
On the second bullet?
We're looking at page 9.
Okay,
So-
page.
So it would read, the City of Hawaiian Gardens receives requests for funds from community or other organizations for specific projects or activities. This policy will provide for standards.
Standards, that's what she wanted, instead of guidelines,
I think
standards.
guidelines-
Can
is
you
too
define the
vague.
word standards?
Guidelines.
Stronger
I
than
think
guidelines.
Laws.
I think that guidelines creates a question about whether or not it's a firm policy from a legal perspective. So guidelines suggest that this is a suggested direction, but that there can be deviations, and standards or procedures
Or
or
boundaries.
policies, or if we use the word shall instead, then that would be firm.
Can you define the word standards?
I think
What are
standards
standards?
would be,
What is defined as standards?
well, the standards would be defined in the body of this resolution.
So it complies with the standards
Yes.
defined below.
But
would
the-
be more appropriate,
Yes,
because there has been no standards determined as to the right now with this particular policy.
that's correct.
So we're talking about standards, but there's nothing about what they are.
I hope that we're going to get our way through that.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Are we adding that section from the old policy to this new?
I think
We're
that's
merging.
what
We're
they're
putting-
discussing.
We're putting pieces together, so far we have.
The
So
purpose.
On the proposed policy, we already approved the purpose section, right?
Right.
Yes.
And then on the
And-
objective section, they already made corrections.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now.
Add
on the proposed,
procedure.
It would be eligibility, but we're going to be adding the wording from the old policy.
The procedures
Procedures.
in there,
Procedures.
yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to.
But you're removing a word. It's going to be standards, not guidelines,
So, well, that's,
We'll provide standards instead of 4 standards.
I
Provide
would like-
standards under which the city will consider request.
I would like to reword procedure. The City of Hawaiian Gardens receives requests for funds from community or other organizations for specific projects or activities. This policy shall consider requests for city funds and the procedures for making such requests. Strike out procedure before the procedures, and strike out will provide for guidelines under which the city will.
can you read the sentence one more time completely?
Yes.
The
So the
sentence beginning
second-
with this policy.
The second sentence reads, this policy shall consider requests for city funds and the procedures for making such requests. So we're striking out, will provide for guidelines under which the city will, and we're striking out procedure.
But what if we say this policy shall provide standards under which the city will consider requests? That's beautiful. And that's strong, and that's to the point. This policy shall provide standards. And that's what this policy does. Provide standards in which the city, which we will, cohere to. Consider requests for city funds and procedures, the procedures for making such requests. Maybe that could be changed, the end.
It could, so this
Oh,
policy.
you did? Okay, good. I didn't hear that. Good job.
This policy shall,
This policy shall provide standards under which the city will consider requests for city funds and the procedures for making such requests. Yeah, that's smooth. Yeah,
So you're replacing will with shall.
with shall
And guidelines with
for
standards.
standards, and taking out the first
Procedure.
procedure that you already did.
Very
Yes.
good, I like it. I'd like to make a motion to approve the new procedure.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
All those in
Aye.
favor? You took my job.
I thought it was whoever makes the motion.
No,
I'm
it's-
sorry.
no.
I'm so sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
No. So we're going to be going through every single sentence as our council meeting to review this policy, which was brought forth by Mr. Barry Bruce, and he is not here at the meeting to give any input or any recommendations as to this policy.
Well, Barry Bruce was only 50% of the panel. The other 50% is to my left. So you wrote all this, right? And you and him put your heads together on this?
I didn't write all of it. Linda wrote it. We just told her what we should.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So see, you have 2 out of 3 here. So it's under control. Barry has another meeting.
I do agree that, he's, Barry, Mr. Bruce brought up this issue repeatedly. He recommended that a change be made. He was trying to find somebody to join the task force. I donated a lot of my time to that task force. And we're here. I myself am putting even more hours towards this policy on top of the hours that I already donated to reviewing this, and he's not here. So that is a little bit disappointing.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. He put his heart into this.
Yes.
A lot of hours. So we can just go over what you guys done because we haven't heard it and we could approve it. So it's a good thing.
But we are not doing we're not going over what has been recommended. What time is it now? It's 7 o'clock. We've gone through an hour of discussion of language where we've looked at 3 particular items of this application. I mean, I know the residents are taking their time, their valuable time to watch city policy be made. And we are pretty much going through language and deleting, and I mean, it just seems that I am not sure what we're doing here. If we're doing every single line in this application, that's why we are given reports beforehand to make recommendations, and just quickly take those recommendations, highlight them, review them, make changes, not necessarily go through every single item of language to make it accordingly.
Well, I think it is our responsibility if we want.
Of course, it's our responsibility if we were all here.
Excuse me, please. To go, if we have to go item by item, like we did when we first went through our first budget, we were here until 2 o'clock in the morning until we got it through. And I know that you might have things to do, but this is our job right now. So if we have to go through item by item, we should.
And I have no problem going through every item by item. It just seems that's a complete lack of respect for me to be here when this committee assignment was given to Mr. Bruce and Ms. Maravilla.
Why did
and
you
now
keep
it seems we're doing committee work.
Mariana, somehow you just want to get Bruce over here, okay? I don't know why. We're capable here, us 4 here, we have a quorum, we can go, we can proceed with that.
Of course we can, and we are proceeding with it as we're doing it.
So why do you insist on having Mayor Barry Bruce here? I mean, it seems like to me like you just keep on doing that.
It's a complete lack
Mariana.
of respect. Complete lack of respect.
But we're here. There's 4 of us here.
Yes.
We have a quorum. Let's
We do have a
proceed
quorum.
and see what we want to do, okay? So just get the mayor out of your mind and let's consider this and let's continue on and let's get this over with. I know it's difficult. I have an appointment someplace else, but it looks like I'm going to miss it anyway. So
I didn't plan to make it a very long meeting, Mr. Rodriguez, either.
But that's what we're here to do.
So you're canceling your meeting. There you go.
That's what we're here.
Committed individuals.
We get our big bucks here for being here.
There
so
you go.
Let's
Thank you,
let's
Mr.
continue
For the record,
on.
not big bucks. For the record, for everybody watching on TV, not big bucks.
Okay, so what are we going to do
We
next?
never divulge that information, but it is public record.
Okay. Let's go through eligibility and see
Guidelines
what
for contributions.
let's see what.
Linda Hollingsworth.
Well, I was just going to say that this, in the old policy, there's the application requirements, but actually, all of that is in the procedures on the second page. So if you want to start comparing them, eligibility requirements, and eligibility would be the thing to look at, and then the application would be more when you get to the procedures.
Would it be wise to just go through the new policy all the way through it now instead of going back and forth?
Well, number one and the old policy are exactly the same language.
And many of the things in there
Yeah.
are the same.
So can we just, whatever's the same, can we just keep going? It seems that the main difference here is going from 75% to 50%. So are we in agreement to lowering that number?
I think just to clarify where we're at.
Yeah, where we at?
So if you look at what's listed as Section 3 eligibility on page 14,
Okay.
that would
Eligibility,
be
yes.
Section 2 eligibility on page 9.
Okay.
If I may add, we added that procedures section from the old, so that number is
Becomes
actually
3.
now becomes 4.
Right, just so that they know where to look. Thanks.
So number 2 and number 3 are pretty much the same, is what we're talking about.
Yes. So I would like to edit the first line under page 14, eligibility, number 3. The following groups and or organizations shall be considered for eligibility for city donations.
Is that item?
What are
item
you
number
changing?
3?
What are you changing?
I'm sort of merging page 9, Roman numeral 2, first line, with page 14, Roman numeral number 3, first line. To read the, if you look at page 14, first line, it'll read the following groups and / or organizations shall be considered, or is the criteria for eligibility for city donations.
I think shall be considered, and then later there would be criteria. We're right now identifying just which groups can apply.
The following groups and or organizations shall be considered for city donations. Roman numeral number 3 under page 14, first sentence. The following groups and / or organizations shall be considered for city donations. Does that sound okay?
Will be considered for.
Shall be considered.
Shall.
The only thing I would say on that is you're saying that organization or groups, but if you look down, if you're going to keep the eligibility here, this was set up to say these are the criteria for them to be eligible. They provide a direct assistance or complement a city program. So that's not really a group or organization. It's a type of donation that you would be giving. So what we were looking at when we put this together was what kinds of donations are we going to give? If their program complements a city program or initiative, they can be considered. If they're valid and current nonprofit organizations within the city, they can be located outside the city with a principal clientele within the city, provide a service or benefit to the residents, demonstrate a need for financial aid. Activities that benefit Hawaiian Gardens will be given priority. So it's not groups. You're not saying specific groups. You're actually saying what types of things these groups might do that would make them eligible. Am I wording that correctly?
Yes, and to combine it, but maybe break it down so it's a little bit more simple to understand, we could say to be eligible to apply for a city donation, a group or organization must be, and then list the type, and then say, and comply with the following criteria, and then list the criteria.
Well, aren't we using the word standards?
Standards is fine as well.
Isn't that the main
Standards
word
is
that we're
fine.
using?
Pretty much any word except guidelines.
So it seems that at this time, we're now going to open this policy where we're having difficulty handing out so much money to people that are outside the city. Right? That's a change from the old to the new? Or where is that in the old?
If I can make one suggestion as far as the revisions to this, if it's, like, we could go through these 7 things and each section by section, and if it's something where you'd like to see it broken up like that, I can also continue working with Linda. Like, if you agree on these fundamentals, then we can break it up where we're not changing any of the substantive information and bring it back to you for the next meeting, that revised version that's put together like that. But we can talk about the 7 things, so you guys make those decisions, and then we can just organize it so that it looks.
And just your idea, but that would defeat the whole purpose of us being here. So hopefully we'll be able to approve it tonight. You're not going to your meeting, so we'll just get this done, and it'll be approved.
You can't approve it tonight because we won't be able to see a typed version that everyone can see the changes.
Councilmember Rios, you asked about in the policy on page 10. There's a line item that says, civic, service, or nonprofit organizations located outside of the city of Hawaiian Gardens that have their principal clientele within the city and serve the community. So actually, the language in the new is exactly what's in the old.
Oh, it is? Okay,
yes.
Where is that?
It's on page 10. It's the second bullet.
Okay, good. Okay, fine.
Can I go back
so
to
the main one is a 75% is what you're talking about?
That's one of the main things, and then we also we took out of the old policy that to be funded, they shall have a legitimate governing board and annual budget, because actually when you start looking at the application process, that's part of what they have to apply. So that wasn't necessary.
So taking into consideration Ms. Carney's comment that your language still has to be clarified to be legally binding for our city, or appropriate language that will be legally bound for our city, you still have to revise it, right? Then can we just take each item on principle? What is it that we want?
You guys don't want to review the language? I think the language is important.
Then you can work with Ms.
I'm suggesting that if it's an organizational issue or a format issue, I can fix that, because you guys don't need to spend your time on that. And then if you want a small change later, we can do that easily. But
I mean, is there something that sticks out to you that needs to be changed instead of working here with, words?
Are we on the eligibility right now?
I just feel like city council members create policy, and this is a policy. So I think it's our prerogative to look at every single line. But if you guys don't feel that way, then I'll work with our attorney.
You were looking at, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm only suggesting the format.
We're going to look at every line right now and approve every line, and then you're going to word it.
I'll clean it up.
Yes.
Like clean up,
yeah, but
not
we're not
change
going
the
to go
words, but clean
nowhere
up
until we look at every line.
organization.
We're going to agree to every line, and then she's going to clean it up.
What we were on eligibility, that first line.
Mm-hmm. And I reworked it. So to read, the following is a criteria for eligibility for groups and or organizations to be considered for city donations.
Okay. Okay.
So can we agree that's the same language as for number 1? Can we move forward with that same language, or is there a change in the particular language that's being used?
Number 1 is good. Except, can we add an S to Hawaiian Gardens? City of Hawaiian Gardens.
Yes.
Add a gardens part.
Wow, that would be nice if our city's name was spelled correctly.
Can you also please clarify what you want to say or what your intent is with valid and current?
Yes, their nonprofit number has to be approved by the state and still functional.
So we want to just say a registered nonprofit,
Yes.
501c3 nonprofit.
Yes.
In good standing with the state of
good
California.
standing with the state of California, yes.
So registered.
So then we can remove valid and current.
Yes.
Registered and what?
Question to staff, is that something you check when you receive the applications?
Yes, we do.
So it's already been, you do?
Well, yeah, that's why we didn't give to the football team, because we
Because they
verified that.
verified that it wasn't an organization?
Yeah,
We went online to verify their status. I don't know if that was done previously, but I did that when I received, yeah, well, I mean, I can't speak to that, but I know I did. So, yeah. You can speak to it.
Then we could use the same language on number 2.
Registered 501c3
Nonprofit in good standing with the state of California.
nonprofit.
So 1 and 2.
So we'll remove or club.
Remove or club.
Does that delete our clubs that we have here, like our soccer clubs and stuff?
No, because they're all 501c3 organizations.
Okay.
So registered 501c3 nonprofit organization in good standing with the state of California within the city of Hawaiian Gardens.
Right. Okay.
Next one.
So we're good on number 1?
We're
We've
looking
done
at,
number 1 and number 2.
yeah, we're looking at 3.
Okay, number 3.
And what is number 3 saying?
That if they were, if the program provides assistance to the city, where's it, or complements a city program. So if you had a city program that their donation would help to fund additional aspects of that or to improve on it. So it would just allow them to be considered for that kind of an activity. Wouldn't have to be their own activity. They might want to help something that we already are doing.
Such as our youth, our future, if it's something that complements our motto, if it's our goal to better the health of the community, if there's an initiative to provide exercise classes or something that will complement our agenda as a city, that's what they're talking about.
Do you like that, the way it's written?
I think that's kind of a complicated sentence. I think we should simplify it.
What do you think, Mariana?
Well, what is Mr. Trimble's recommendation to
Provide
simplify it?
direct assistance to or complement a city program or initiative.
It's the same thing that's already there. Number 3? What did you
Number
change?
3. No.
He wants to
I'm
simplify
reading
that.
it. I think we should change it
You're
to...
reading it. Okay, because I'm like, it's
Yeah.
exactly the same language as is in front of me. What are you changing?
I'm saying that we need to reword it.
Right, so what
so
is your
organizations can
recommendation?
understand it. Because they're going to...
Oh, my goodness. So what is your recommended language?
I'm looking to Linda and Kendra.
How
So
about
are we
you talk-
saying here?
I'm
not
okay
sure
with
what-
it the way it is. So.
Are we saying here is, for instance, say our one of our programs, which would be the For Lorico or something, or what was the other ones that we have here? The arts.
Oh,
Yeah, so say we're trying to
we
get
as
rid
a
of...
city will provide.
It's a city. This is not
Provide
this-
service to-
This is
well-
not a committee or a nonprofit. This is for city programs,
Yeah.
right?
No, but the intent is
Yeah.
if there's a community program or a nonprofit, we're specifically talking about nonprofit organizations. If they have an idea of how to complement our folklorico program, then they can go ahead and submit a proposal. It's not about city programs. This is an application for nonprofit organizations
A program or initiative.
whose ideas help us better serve the community. It's what the intent is.
I like it.
But do we want nonprofits telling us that they could,
Well,
coming
they're-
into our employees' domain and telling them how to run their program better?
Well, I'm thinking more like, what if we're all considering a recycling program and we don't really have anything in place and we have a nonprofit that would like to do something along those lines. I think they should be able to submit an application if they're a 501c3.
Or what if you already have like the event this weekend and a nonprofit wanted to set up like a book fair as part of the carnival, something like that? Like if you already have a city activity or event going on and they want to do something else that would be complementary to the program.
It does not say in lieu of. It does not
It's just
say
an
replace.
example.
It says complements. It helps.
And we will fund them?
We make that decision.
We
when
will only
receive-
fund them fairly and responsibly.
if we have
Of course.
3 people or more say yes.
I don't know. Something doesn't rub me right.
What
with
is it
this.
that you're seeing in that that's not comfortable?
Excuse me?
What are you seeing in that language that's not comfortable?
Because they're going to come and they're going to complement an existing program in Hawaiian Gardens.
Well, they're going to add to. So
I know,
basically, they're going to add to the
it.
program.
So
They're
we're going
gonna-
to pay them money to add to our existing.
But that's what everybody
program
does.
or initiative. So
Yeah.
it's more about what the city has laid out for their goals and objectives for the youth in the city. So Ballet Folklorio is a good one. If a nonprofit came and said, you know what, we want to help that Ballet Folklorio do better. We want to buy them uniforms or dresses, and here, can you give us a donation and we will buy those for them? That's one of our programs, but they can use their money to help fund and improve that.
This applies to every single person that has submitted an application.
And it's
For instance, the Eagles, they complement our city programs by providing soccer.
and it's a matter of collaboration.
Yeah.
Right? That's the
Alright.
path that we are taking as a community, as a state, as a country. It's good to work with other people to make things happen.
Little League too. I mean, we already have a baseball program in the summer, but they complement our existing programs.
So do you have some language to change it to? Or?
But you know what, you guys are, if we have that, we're going to have people coming from all over the place with applications from that. And we're only going to have a certain amount of money, and we're going to be responsible to distribute these donations to programs, especially here in the city of Hawaiian Gardens.
But
I don't see, I don't like this, having people coming out here and say, okay, we're going to buy dresses for the Ballet for Lorico, and so can we get $5,000?
They have to be a 501c3. So they have to be a nonprofit organization. And they would just be choosing to use the money for, and that was just an example. I don't know that they would do that. But like she said, the soccer program is one. That complements one of the goals of the city, which is to have this youth activity. So they're a 501c3. They have something that benefits and helps the goals of the city.
But it goes back to our language that we just approved. If they have a legitimate proposal and they have met all the standards that we are going to be outlining, they can go ahead and request that money.
Well,
You have to be fair to them and address their concerns.
not necessarily with what they're saying. Sue was just asking if number 3 would be covered in 1 or 2. I do think that the part in 2 that says "and service the community" could possibly be read to encompass number 3, but that's not part of number 1.
Wouldn't it be
Maybe.
better to donate the money to the actual program instead of having somebody else managing that money? That's what's going to happen here. You're going to have an outside, say,
Well-
nonprofit to manage money for that particular program that we have in the city of Hawaiian Gardens already.
Well, you could.
Why do we need to have
Then
somebody
maybe
to do that?
eliminate that line if that's creating a lot of
That's the way I
controversy.
see it.
Just
There you go.
eliminate
Let's
the
just
line.
eliminate it. Sounds
Eliminate
good.
that line.
There you go.
Let's take line 3
Eliminate
out.
it.
And let's start taking care of our
Is that okay?
programs. We'll donate to our programs.
Then maybe you should consider incorporating 1, 2, 3, and 4 together. You could say a valid or a registered 501c3 nonprofit in good standing with the state of California, located within or outside of the city of Hawaiian Gardens, that have their principal clientele within the city and service the community by, if you want to add something else, because whether they're located in Hawaiian Gardens, they could have a Hawaiian Gardens address for their nonprofit, but not necessarily serve the community. So maybe you want to clarify to say any 501c3 that does these things.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Well,
That sounds good.
that's the exact
Number
language
2
that's on
does.
page 10.
So I'm saying combine 1, 2, 3, 4.
What you just highlight is on page 10, second bullet. It's the exact language.
Now, that one's just the outside, but what she's doing is
Inside or
combining 1 and
outside.
2 together. So it
Just
takes,
highlighting 50C3 instead of
and
civic
yeah,
service
so
or nonprofit
expanding it.
organization.
That sounds good.
I'll go with Kendra's recommendation.
Okay.
Good job.
So I'm just saying that it's all covered by and service the community.
1, 2, and 4 becomes 1. Yes.
Mhm.
Right? Okay.
Unless you would like, because so we could also say and service the community.
I like that general language.
Okay.
Okay.
Demonstrates financial need. And that's
Yes.
going
So
to be
number
that's
5.
going to be determined later by their application process, right?
But this is, and all these things will have to be determined in the application process.
Right.
So, yeah.
So
Okay.
hope they need the money if they're coming before us.
And number 6, we're sticking with 50% of residents of Hawaiian Gardens.
And that one got a little bit tricky, only in that one of the things that we looked at was if you had someone with less than 50% in there, but the program would, even if it only serviced 3%, but it was a program that you wanted to have residents have access to, and without that funding, it might not be available, that then that 50% wouldn't necessarily have to apply. But the goal would be to have the 50% residents.
I would like to add at the end, or at the discretion of the council. I mean, if you want to reduce it from 75 to 50%, but at the discretion of the council allows a little bit more flexibility, as you just said, Linda.
Yeah, but
Well,
then that's going to defeat the policy.
what-
I'd rather just keep everything on paper. We could drop it to 40%.
Mr. Trimble, last week you defeated your own policy suggesting Palms Elementary. What percentage of that would be of that school?
We have a lot of kids that go to Palms. Maybe not 50%,
It was 60,
but
no,
we have a
it
lot
was
of kids
60
that go
students out of how many? Four?
there. Yeah.
Oh, Aloha had 60.
Yes.
So how many of the
Palms has
student
100.
population, what's the percentage? I mean, how many students? So out of 600 students, 50% is 300 students. So this eliminates them. Is that what you're suggesting?
I do like at the discretion of the council.
It's just, it gives us more flexibility because I supported you in that because I see the purpose of it. When you give strict language, it prohibits any sort of flexibility that we would desire.
But we said schools are different from this procedure here. This is nonprofit. School
Right.
is different. We went through that already in our first hour of discussion.
Yeah.
So we don't want to revisit it. This is,
What if there's a student who gets an amazing opportunity to go with a nonprofit to something that once in a lifetime opportunity, and they're requesting funding for that specific student, but because technically their nonprofit doesn't have at least 50%, then we wouldn't be able to help that student or that through that nonprofit. That is not a school.
we've sent residents with gifts, a talent. We send them to Cuba. We send them all over the place. So if this person is, we could support someone.
Not Cuba,
We could
because
support.
I don't think.
Excuse me.
Not Cuba.
Guatemala.
All right. Well, for boxing, we send them all over the world. Yes. So if we have a student from Hawaiian Gardens that excels and has an opportunity to go, that we can.
Your
We do
old
that.
Your old policy has ineligible applicants are individual persons.
Yeah, so no, that's not even a
That you
That's
did
not even
in
an item
fact-
with discussion.
You
We already
did in
deleted that
fact
option.
provide some money for, you're talking about the boxer.
Yeah.
You did make a decision, the council made a decision to do that. That was not part of the donation policy in that they didn't fill out an application, wasn't a 501c3, it was an individual person. So obviously, none of that fell under this policy. That was another type of funding that you did for a specific person and a specific program. And I don't know how that plays with the policy, but that is what that was.
But there is a policy for that, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
No, we
did
just
it.
sent them to send them?
It was brought to the council, and the council voted to support that particular activity.
So for this, though, we are considering only nonprofit organizations. So what we can do is leave the 50% and then say the council will have discretion to determine whether the benefit to the community of Hawaiian Gardens outweighs this particular standard or criteria, and then when staff makes a recommendation to you, they can highlight the percentage, and then you can make a determination as a council whether or not you think, because that's really a discretionary determination anyway, is if this particular benefit would be so positive for the city that even if they had only 30% were Hawaiian Gardens citizen residents, it would still bring something positive to the rest of the community by having them here.
But if it's not included in the discretion of the council, if they have 30%, they will not reach the council level. It will be denied at the staff level.
No, well, if it were handled like their fireworks thing, what we would be doing is bringing a recommendation to approve the donation or to decline the donation, and you would have the ability to override that decision. So if you handled it that way, that would take away that particular concern.
So I would say, however, regardless of the percentage, all applications will be brought forth to the council. That's still, I mean, that defeats the whole purpose of why we're doing this.
No, if they have the 50% and they meet all the standards, it's out of the council's hands. We're going to approve it. But if they're under that, then it comes to council. But I want to make sure this is clear. Say we have some guy from Hawaiian Gardens on this team and they have opportunity to go. We're not going to send the whole team because they have a guy from Hawaiian Gardens on the team. We're going to send that one guy with the team.
We cannot
Then
do
we can't.
individual donations.
Then
but
we
we
cannot
can,
do that
but we
then.
can contribute to the nonprofit, and in hopes that that money will be used, or with the intent of that money being used to support our residents. I think that we should continue to have, or at the discretion of the council.
Discretion could be, like I said, only for the less than 50.
Yes, or at the discretion of the council if the percentage is not met, if the resident percentage is not met.
And if we have any funds left. 'Cause by that time, I think the way
Exactly.
we're going here, we're going to get, we're
Yes.
going to be out of funds in no time at all.
And that's in
So-
the policy, and we're going to stick to it.
So if I am interpreting this correctly, then what you would be saying is that we would, at some point, we might get to the approval process here, and what we would be doing is having staff review it, it meets all the criteria, it's fine. Staff looks at it, and the only criteria they don't meet is the 50%. That would come to council for you to then review and determine if you should
We
allow it.
want to give final approval, even if they meet all
Okay.
everything. Bring it to
So-
us so we could
So a
make that decision
recommendation
from
to
up here.
accept or deny, and then you can make that decision from there. Okay.
Yes.
So where are we at now?
We're on number
lost.
7, I think, if we've agreed on number 6.
I don't see it.
Oh.
What is it doing back there?
She's working really hard. I think it got pushed by the chair.
So number 7 seems to be
Good.
good. There should be no
Okay.
changes in that.
All right, very good. So,
So then we'll proceed with
And
the-
that says, just because the audience doesn't have the application in front of them, it says, activities that benefit the youth of Hawaiian Gardens will be given a priority during the review process.
I remember that, okay, so are we on to the next section?
Everyone's okay with 7.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question on number 3, the word evangelistic. I think our legal counsel was going to give us more clarification on the word.
So I don't think evangelistic is the appropriate word for this. I think what you're,
Where we at?
Number 3 under.
Oh, okay. Evangelical, that means actual preaching.
So what was the appropriate word that?
so if you want to consider giving to a registered 501c3 nonprofit that has a religious purpose, then you can give for only secular activities. So if if there's a church group that meets their criteria and they want to host a youth day in the park, and it's completely secular, even though it's hosted by the church, but there's no religious activity occurring, then you could consider that.
But that's not a 501c3, that's a 501c4.
What, for instance, also like, for instance, during Thanksgiving or Christmas, they want to donate so many turkeys. Can they apply to buy turkeys to donate to the community or something in that? Would the, would that be covered on that? I mean, even or if they want to buy chairs or something for
for school or
for their whatever, yeah.
So
but like I say, it has nothing to do with preaching or nothing, right?
It can't have any type of religious purpose because you can't. The government cannot. Not only can the government approve a specific religion, but you can't approve religion in general.
Mm-hmm.
Are religious groups 501(c)(3)s?
They're 501c4s.
So then that would have to be added if that was going to be part of
That's
this.
correct. They're currently not added, not eligible.
Well, we could add it. We could add C3 and C4.
A point of order, I think that Mr. Trimble would have to recuse himself if we're discussing adding 501c4.
I agree because he is part of a religious sector. Is that correct? He is a pastor?
That's correct.
A good pastor.
But I think in this sense, since we're talking about it generally and not his specific church, then he can participate in the conversation. The conflict comes in if it would be something that he personally would derive a benefit from, and since we're not talking about his employer necessarily, then he can participate in the conversation.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you, I will never ask this city for money for my church. Never.
They can't give it to you.
I'm good. So really, honestly, so I'm good here.
Well, we couldn't give to your church or the Way Out because we have council members that would directly benefit from that donation, so that wouldn't even be an option.
Well, there's more than just two churches in the neighborhood. I mean, churches.
Benefit. We're talking about.
I know.
The residents, the people.
I know, but that wouldn't
I mean,
even be an option for us. It's against the law.
Well, that's when you separate. We're not separating. Well, we're separating. We're still separating the church from government, right?
No, I understand. But if, say, for instance, the Way Out wanted to donate money for turkeys, for instance, we couldn't, as a council, vote on it because it's directly benefiting a member of the city council. It's nepotism. It's against the law.
Well, let's talk to our city attorney. I think if anybody knows the law.
Conflict.
It's not an evangelistical event. It's feeding the homeless. They feed the homeless at, like, say, Thanksgiving. They have 350 homeless people come and they feed 350 homeless, and the homeless eat and leave. Eat and leave.
It's against the law.
To eat and leave?
No, it's
yeah.
For their churches.
I think I'm sorry. I think, are we talking about if a church or if they're
these
particular?
specific churches.
So there's a separate conflict issue unrelated to it being just religion, but with the city giving to an employer of a council member.
It's against the law.
Yes.
Okay, good. And like I'm saying, we don't need your money.
Hank's not asking for it.
Yeah, I'm not asking for it. But what about other churches they have after-school programs for kids?
So as long as it's entirely non-religious,
How many churches
you
do
can
we
consider
have?
it.
16 churches in Hawaiian Gardens.
In the city of Hawaiian Gardens,
Yes.
we have 16 churches.
Yes, you do. Yeah. Well,
So-
let's take Bill Cox. He has 7 in his building. He has 3 separate congregations. Okay, all right, okay. The church on Hawaiian has 2. I have 2. Across the street from the fire department, they have 4 or 3. They're bunched up together at different times, but they're congregations, separate congregations. Yes, they all have Chinese,
Across the
Spanish,
street, we have
English in every building.
And of course, you have St. Peter Chanel.
And yes. So there's 16 churches in Hawaiian Gardens. So there's the Way Out, exclude them. Exclude me, but I'm talking about the other churches. then they rule with integrity. They're not going to take your turkeys and say, here, if you say this prayer, I'll give you this. They're not going to do that. That's safe.
So what is wrong with putting religious in there?
You can say, you can use religious. I'm just saying evangelistic is not I don't think that encompasses enough of the activities for all religions.
Is non-secular a better term?
Non-secular.
Non-secular.
But then if you're going to, and you're going to put that in there, then we didn't go back, were you going to add 501c4s?
Non-secular is defined as what?
Non-religious.
So saying pretty much the same
Or-
thing. If it's saying the following organization
Secular is non-religious.
Yeah.
Non-secular would be
shall not be
religious.
considered eligible. It's already saying not, so business, religious, political, and the illegal activities.
So we're adding religious.
Taking out evangelistic, adding religious.
And take out evangelistic, right?
Yeah.
And then
And
are you
if I-
going back to do the 501c4?
Would it be acceptable if I do some additional research about 501c4 and the appropriateness of that and bring that back with the finalized version?
Please do.
Wait, the heading of this says the following organizations or activities shall not be considered as eligible to receive city funds.
Right.
Religious.
That's
Activities.
activities.
Activities. For what it says is business, religious, political, or illegal activities. So it's not the group, it's the activity that
Oh,
they're
okay, all
supporting
right,
with
yeah,
that money.
the activity, yes, okay, I see it now. So we want to keep evangelistic in it, because if a church is doing evangelical things, they're preaching, and that eliminates them. But if it's just a activity at a church, they are eligible.
I think evangelistic is equivalent to religious.
Yeah, I mean, evangelistic, this is just a certain type of religion, isn't it? It's
Well-
evangelizing people. There's also just
Yeah.
simply
Well,
just
when you evangelize, I'm trying to win you over. I'm trying to tell you truth so you could come to my side. That's evangelistic. If you come to my church and we're not having a service, but we're having free popcorn and it's raining outside and we're getting you out of the wet.
So that's not religious.
But that's
That's not religious.
that's
yeah,
religious.
exactly.
We're
But
excluding
that's what I'm
religious.
saying. Churches do that kind of stuff
That-
for the
that's
community.
correct.
And I think
That's
what we're
correct.
saying is
We're
that
not
that could
talking
be
about that.
okay.
We're talking about as a
Religious
government
activities.
agency, we are not allowed to do religious activities. Is that correct?
That
Yes.
is correct.
Yeah,
So-
and I agree. So that's called evangelical services.
It's called religious
Yeah,
activities.
but now listen, say a church is having something for the community. After school sports, bringing kids in activities, coloring. Are they eligible for funds from Hawaiian Gardens? If they're doing Hawaiian Garden kids
She's
things?
going to address 501c4s at the next meeting.
So possibly that could be fine. So I think what we're talking about here is all these activities. And I think that religious is a more all-encompassing word than evangelistic, because religious would apply to all religions, or it's a more accepted legal term to apply to any religion across the board. And I think evangelistic is more commonly used with specific Christian religion.
And although we are, yeah, exactly, and although we keep talking about Christian religions, we do have to keep in mind that there are various other religious communities, Hindu, right? Buddhism,
Yeah.
Jewish.
But
Jewish,
let's just take
et
the
cetera.
building itself. If you fill it with a bunch of drunks, it's kind of like a bar, right? And, or if you, you know.
I'm like, what are we talking
Or
about?
if you
Mr.
fill it with a
Rodriguez?
bunch of-
Their expression was more expressive than mine. I'm like,
I'm just saying, it depends on what's going on inside that building, and some functions in that building can be supported by our funds because it's for our kids.
Anytime it's identified as religious, it's supposed to be separate from the government.
Okay, that's
That
why
has
we're not
already been
going to
established.
allow that word to go in here.
Which is why religious is in there, because they're not.
I know.
The fact
receive
that
funds.
some
But we're going to be
organizations,
fair and responsible.
of course we are.
You know,
And
so,
if we're looking at activities by religious organizations that are separate from religion, that's what Kendra's going to look into to clarify that we are abiding by legal ramifications and that the intent is not defeated by legal restrictions. So I see that your intent is to help religious organizations do secular things, such as simply feed the homeless, simply provide school materials, simply have a
Help with
health fair.
homework. Yeah.
Simply, right.
Health
So
fairs.
that's what Ms. Carney
Done.
is going to look into. She does not have an answer at this time, and that has already been considered as part of our application process.
Okay, then we're going to table this section, right?
No, we're
So-
going to add religious.
We're
For
gonna,
further
And we're
input.
going to, she's going to look up to 501c4s.
Yes.
But we're all approving religious. All in favor? I'd like to make a motion.
Well, I need more clarification on that before I vote.
Are you asking?
I think that they're religious, right? Not
Religious.
non-secular.
Okay.
So we're just saying that the activity,
That are religious.
just point of clarification.
Oh, that are
the
religious.
activity that's religious.
Is not
Yeah,
allowed.
but
Yes.
not a group
I
that
agree.
might also
So
be religious but having
evangelistic
its
services cannot be funded by the City of Hawaiian Gardens. I agree.
We're changing it to religious.
Yes.
religious service activities can't be funded.
I would like to make a motion to approve the change from evangelistic to religious. Could I get a second?
Do we approve it individually, or should we approve the whole eligibility on this? Finish it off and approve the whole, since we already
So we're
went-
okay then with religious?
Okay, so let's go on to
The next one?
number 4, or?
Wait, we got to vote.
No, let's
Oh,
go on
vote
to
on
number
it.
4, and then we'll vote on the whole.
Mr. Rodriguez is directing the meeting, and that's his recommendation.
I'll rescind my
I disagree
motion.
with that.
Yeah, let's continue with number 4 and number 5, and then we'll take the vote. Okay, so let's go to number 4.
That's perfectly fine with me.
Would you read that one for us? there?
Sure. Number 4, activities or organizations that are determined to have engaged in legally prohibited forms of discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual preference, marital status, or other prohibited forms of discrimination as specified in applicable state or federal laws. They are not eligible to apply for donations.
So my only question there for clarification is just determined by whom? By a court of law? By
As determined by state or federal laws. Let's strike out specified and applicable.
So by a conviction? Because I mean, there's just a difference between if somebody's charged or actually pleads guilty
Convicted.
or found guilty.
Yeah, I think this is pretty far-fetched for a city to put this kind of limitations on people. I mean,
I think
It's
we
on
can't
your
Was
tell
old
them-
Omar-
policy.
We can't
It's
tell
in your
them
old policy
how they're
also.
supposed to believe in order to get this, or we got to say, if you've been convicted of this in a court of law, then you're not eligible. But if there's no record of them being convicted of this, we just can't accuse them of it.
Right. And we can't just let a third party accuse them of that without any
Documentation
foundation.
from a conviction in court.
Now, this
That
is just
would it
for
be instead of as
organizations
determined?
within the city of Hawaiian Gardens, not outside Hawaiian Gardens.
we're not donating money
Yeah.
to anybody who is
Yeah.
discriminating.
But I'm saying this, if we, even when this paragraph is for our own city only, I mean, we're
For
not gonna
anybody
have-
who
we're not
applies.
gonna have, people come in from Long Beach or something and applying, you know, and then they can file against us. So, are we talking about just within the city of Hawaiian Gardens, or what?
We already approved that language, Mr. Rodriguez. That was in the eligibility. That was number 1. Kendra, can you read that again?
The registered 501c3 nonprofit in good standing with the state of California, within or outside the city of Hawaiian Gardens, that have their principal clientele within the city and service the community.
And we took a vote, and that was already approved.
Is your
What was
question
your-
about where their illegal
It
activities
does say
are?
outside the city, Mr. Rodriguez.
So,
I think he's talking, are you talking about where their conviction was?
yeah.
That shouldn't
No,
matter
he's
where the
talking about
conviction
service
is.
organizations.
Excuse me, please.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Rhodes.
So we're going by first paragraph on this particular also, right? Like, as you were saying, Mariana?
Just to clarify, so we're adding language in terms of convictions now?
So my question is just determined by whom?
Yeah.
'Cause it
By a
shouldn't-
court of law.
That's a good.
I think that would be
I
appropriate.
mean, isn't it, aren't we already, as a city, not supposed to, I mean, discriminate on the gender and all that kind of good stuff? Isn't that already included as part of our
Yes, and this
charter
is saying that you're
or
not going to
city?
donate to somebody who has been found to have done that. So it's part of, like, you know, in all the housing
Right, that we will
standards,
not
it says
discriminate
that
on that.
also, and that's part of usually
Basic language.
any applicant for funds that relate to housing have to say that they don't discriminate, even though that's already the law.
Yes. So how are you changing it?
I was just saying determine activities or organization, well, activities doesn't necessarily work there, but maybe organizations that are determined by a court of law to have engaged in legally prohibited forms of, and then the rest of the,
Well, most applications indicate a certain time, right? Have you convicted of a felony or of a certain time within a certain period, right? Is this
Which-
like the similar for organizations?
that it
Is there
would
like
go
a
away.
record?
There's
We're talking about
record.
503s.
Yes,
They violated, say they've been found by the state, I'm assuming, to have discriminated based on race. How long is that stayed on the record? Or how long are we going to determine, it's not here, you know, if it happened 20 years ago, or do they still have to report it to us? If they have, obviously, if
So
it happened recently.
it would happen, it would depend on the agency. For some, it stays on permanently if it's a license they have to have from the state to operate some type of event or skill. If it's a criminal conviction, it's permanent. It doesn't leave
But
their record.
Here's the thing. If they have been convicted in a court of law, they will not allow a license again. So, so if, say it happened 20 years ago and they went through the proper things and got a new license, it's probably not on the new license because the old license expired. Follow me? So, so if they have a license from the court of law, it's not pending.
So, I mean, I think that this,
But we're going to need court of law written in here, so we won't determine if they did or not, because
And-
that's not our call.
and I think the fact that if they're a registered 501c3 nonprofit in good standing with the state, that should
Cover
clear
that.
up that, but they have to get that certificate from the state and show it to you, and then that checks the box that they're in good standing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you put that in there?
That's in your policy now.
It's in the old policy also?
So you don't have to have this if it's groups that are in good standing with the state. That can be sufficient for the city. But it's if you want to have this, there's no problem with having it. Like, there's no legal problem with having it.
Yeah.
It seems that it's at the end, specified in applicable state or federal laws. Doesn't that cover it?
That
Kendra?
would be the discrimination.
Right.
The discrimination prohibitions are specified in the law. But again, since now we've added the part above about being in good standing with the state, I think that the city could rely on the status of the certificate to meet that qualification.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Because the state would yank it quick.
Okay, is there any more discussion on this, or
Should we-
any changes?
So the wording, one more time, that first line, please.
Well, if you want to rely on the good standing certificate, then we could remove this and just have them, I mean, they're already going to have to submit their certificate, so we could remove
I like
this
the
section.
language, though. I mean, yeah, you're not supposed to
And you can just-
discriminate. You're not supposed to, you know. Yeah,
Right,
so
it's
it's
in the
not
old
like
one. It's
yeah,
existing.
it's just language, just to reiterate that obviously we're just following the laws, and they're supposed to be too.
Okay, well, I guess we have one more item on this page, which is schools will be considered for donations under a separate policy.
I think that should be removed because it will be addressed in another policy and schools aren't part
Okay.
of this.
I agree.
So,
Okay, strike out number 5.
And again, if schools are linked to a 503 policy, maybe they could be, you know,
If
they
there's
shouldn't be
a
excluded. Same
nonprofit
thing as a-
associated with it, then that nonprofit could apply for this and a school could
Right.
apply under the school.
So different.
okay, so now do we have a motion to approve item
Would
number
it
3?
hurt us to strike 4? Would it be a bad thing? It would? Yeah, because,
There's no harm in stating it. And we could add,
so we're going to change the top line to conviction and,
I think we could say determined by a state agency or court of law to have engaged in, you know, whatever, the remainder of the item.
determined by a court of law. I like that.
State agency or court of law?
Well, what's a state agency?
Like the state Board of Education, Board of Consumer Affairs, a board that governs the medical clinic.
I'd rather stay legal with the court of law.
But state agencies do have Ts.
So sometimes there could be administrative determinations, and that would be the agency and not necessarily a court.
Okay.
So it's like,
State agency.
state agency or court of law.
Okay, court of, okay.
All right, so let's continue with, we don't have 5, so now we can take, we can have a motion to approve, is that the eligibility or objective also?
We could make it subsection B under eligibility to state the factors that would make you certainly ineligible. Right, that's what they're voting on. I'm just saying to organize it, we could make the first part A and the next part B under the overall heading of eligibility.
Organizationally, that sounds great.
So do we have a motion now?
I'd like to make a motion to accept it, to accept the eligibility A and B.
I'd like to second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So now we have procedures now.
This is where there were a lot of changes made in the way the process was going to be handled. So that's probably, maybe you could kind of discuss do you want to discuss what the original thought was?
So the original thought, a lot of this came from Mr. Bruce to set a strict amount. Do you guys want to read through it? It's basically what I'm going to say.
Okay, we have a request that take a little break.
Like a couple,
I second that.
So let's take 5 or 10 minutes, or do you want to table the rest of it and continue in another meeting, or you want to continue?
I recommend we just get it out of the way.
Okay, we'll do that. All right, so let's take a break and then we'll come back. We shall continue on with the meeting for April the 19th, 2016. So now we're going to go to procedures. Item number 1. Do we have somebody read it so we can discuss? Or you want? Annually, the City Council will approve budget amounts to be made available for donation and distribution annually. So we're not going to discuss the amount yet
No.
until we have a budget, right?
correct.
Right. And a new line item will be created because there's none existing at the moment. Is that what I understand?
That's correct. Oops, sorry. That's correct.
So there hasn't been a limit that we're exceeding all these donations up to now.
We do. We are bringing, yeah, but annually, they're going to approve a budget amount, even if you have a biannual budget to your budget. You can come back each year and identify what you want to put in there and make adjustments to it.
So we have any questions on item number one?
No.
Number two, annually, as part of the budget process, the city council will establish the time periods when these funds will be made available to organizations. The amount to be budgeted for each period and the maximum amount to be received by an organization per fiscal year.
I mean, I think that's redundant. It's already an amount will be available in the budget. That's our annual budget is annually. So it seems that this is relating to a latter part of this recommendation that I do not agree with.
This is that part that I was telling you was a substantial change, and you could probably look at a lot of this applies to that. So
right, so that's applying to that particular section.
The recap of that basically was there was a discussion about, instead of just letting people apply all the time, that you would allow them periods of time to apply, and you'd have deadlines so they can apply each quarter, and you have a deadline for them to apply for that quarter. And then you would approve all of them would come in at one time and be approved at one time, rather than as they come throughout the year. So that was the general plan with this. So if that plan is not what you want to do, a lot of these will not apply.
I mean, it seems that the concern is that somehow we're exceeding the budget, whatever budget was there, which there's never been a limit as to what we can expend. Now we will have a limit. So regardless of when these applications come in, if those applications exceed that limit, then we'll have to reconsider in another option. But the amounts guide.
If we have a limit, and the only way to have every applicant to get funds, that would, if we have a limit, we might have to restrict the funds to cater to all the nonprofits that put in for.
But we wouldn't know because.
Well, once we have the limit, and then when when they come in, we know exactly how much money we have to spend. So therefore, if somebody even if a nonprofit wants $5,000, say, well, we might have to just give you $4 because we want to make sure we give these other nonprofits also.
So, I mean, it looks like from this, like we're really getting nitpicky. So there's a budget amount that we're giving. We can't talk about how much. From that budget amount will be cut in between time periods. So how many periods will there be? We still haven't established it.
Well, my concern is that if we set an amount and we're sticking to that amount, it's not really fair, because if people turn in applications throughout the whole year, pretty much whoever turns it at the end of the year may not get any funding. For instance, the science camps that we just approved for Hawaiian Elementary, they probably wouldn't have gotten any money had we stuck to the amount, and it's first come, first serve.
That's a different, that would be under schools, I believe. But I agree in terms of that, yeah. We're talking about there's a city budget, there's an annual amount. We're hoping our annual individuals will reapply, but there are certain time periods when they apply. So,
well, I think the
explains it.
That's if we have a finance commission and they do it, if we advertise it in.
Well, not just the finance commission.
Sorry.
The purpose, I think, was to address what you just said, and that was that if you just have an annual amount and people can do it whenever, then that could all be gone by the end of the year and those people don't get any. By advertising and saying, okay, here's our time period in which you can apply, it gets the word out. Everybody comes in and you've already decided for each quarter, here's how much is available. And then you get all the applications in at the same time. You look at all of those applications, and then you see, okay, how many fit this amount? And if you don't have enough money for all of them, you then have the option of either proportioning it out and saying, each of you get a little bit less, but you all get something, or you say, you know, we're going to give it to these guys and we're not going to give it to these because they're less needy at this time, or whatever your criteria is. But you then control how much you're doing in that quarter, and then someone can apply the next period. So it was more to try and help assure that more people had an opportunity to get it. The
advertisement is quite expensive. So this advertisement money, that's going to come out of the annual budget amount.
You could put an advertisement and change that advertisement and have it just be postings on the website and on bulletin boards. I mean, how you handle the advertising is something you could discuss. It can be as expensive or as least expensive as you like.
The casino has a policy where Hawaiian Gardens residents get priority. So the more our donation fund goes down, the closer we are to Hawaiian Garden organizations. They get priority. But what I was going to say, as we read on, it kind of explains itself. So we're discussing things that are answered in number 4 and number 5. So we should just read this whole thing through and then come back to anything. We could put a check by when we want to come back to. But this it explains itself.
Right, if we're in agreement, but I am not in agreement. We're now establishing a commission to review these funds.
What about, just so that the council doesn't have to continually establish time periods, what about including in this either quarterly, and you establish the dates that they would have to apply by, and then you can do like what Linda said, if you get 10 applications for one quarter, then you look at them and you divide them up, and then it would be all considered at once, so staff doesn't have to have this rolling basis. The council can see how much money they've allotted to that time period. It's just
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess we're talking about all these new people that are going to be applying. My understanding, the nonprofits that apply are the sports teams. That's it. Those are the only people we provide donations funds. The other people are just the schools with the camps, and that's the only ones that require. These other library funds that, you know, I'm not sure if you're including in that. That was an individual request to enhance their service to the community. But we're now talking about chairs for students. We're not talking about. So I'm not sure how extensive this is going to be expanded. I mean, what is it that we're talking about? What is the ideal donation policy that we're implementing now?
Mr. Bruce isn't here, so I cannot really.
Well,
and we're not discussing that because we agreed that the consensus was that we have quorum and we're going to establish whatever is done at this meeting. We'll move forward. That's what I'm understanding we're discussing.
I don't remember the details. We went through several meetings, so I don't remember how this even came about. But I think one of the goals was to provide the opportunity for other organizations to recognize that they had the ability if they were a nonprofit. And maybe you're right. Maybe there are no others. But what has become standard is just the same groups, the same groups, the same groups. Right. There may be other groups that are not aware that this is possible.
There's tons of individuals that need money.
Well, if they're a 501(c) and they're in good standing and they're doing something that is in line with our eligibility, I would believe that what you want to do is offer them the opportunity to also apply for some of these funds. And I think that's what this was for.
That's where we're heading.
Well, if that's what you want to do, that's a council decision. But I think that was the intent of this change that was made in here.
Well, I think Hawaiian Gardens City Council should take care of Hawaiian Garden city teams and city organizations
they have
and
to
nonprofits and don't worry about Long Beach, Lakewood, Artesia, Norwalk. They have their councils. They have their fundraisers. We should concentrate on ourselves and worry about our residents.
That's in your policy already. That's in your policy already. So this doesn't change that.
Okay.
This doesn't change that. Your policy already says they need to be either a certain percentage or benefit the city. It's all about Hawaiian Gardens.
And even tonight we already discussed that particular portion of it.
Yeah.
So
I would say maybe if we really need to get into time periods, maybe, I mean, council just goes by so quick. I mean, my years, I've already been here. I keep referring back to it. It just goes by quickly. I would just do, instead of quarterly, just do 2 times. Beginning of the year, the budgets are June, so every 6 months. 2 times a year, and that's it. And split the budget exactly in half.
at the beginning of the budget session that we always have, which is
Well, when
every
we have a
6
budget-
months.
Right.
My concern is what if you get a bunch of new applicants in the beginning of, what if you get a lot more applicants on the second half?
Well, we're going to go ahead and treat them fairly and responsibly and allocate only that money, Myra.
Yeah, but look at,
We're now allocating, this is requesting us to allocate a certain amount of funds. We're defeating the purpose of what we're talking about. We just agreed that there will be a certain amount of money allocated for this purpose. So if it runs out, I think we're in agreement that that's it.
One of the reasons that that language was in there was, as part of the budget process, you'd figure out, this year, do we want to do twice a year? Do we want to do it 4 times a year? And you could change that each time you change the budget amount. You could say, okay, we saw how this went last year. We're going to just do it once a year. We're going to do it in April. Or you can make that change at the time you establish the budget amount. So
And
you don't
again,
have-
I'm not sure how much money we're talking about here.
well, how much, you're going to have to get into that discussion in the budget. How
There was
much
no
do you
line item
want to
before.
earmark for
I'm glancing
donations?
through this, and there's time frames in here. There's time frames in this thing already. So I think we should read on.
We're creating a whole new group. So 2 times a year, is that something that would be amenable to everybody?
No.
I think we should leave it, city council will establish the time periods.
Well, that's what we're going to do right
That's
now.
what we're doing right now.
No, but I think that we should establish it at the beginning of each fiscal year.
As part
As
of the,
it
as
says
part of
here.
the budget process.
But that's not a standard that's already outlined in our policy. Our policy indicates exactly how we will proceed as a public entity. It's not changeable.
Actually, if you read number 2, it says annually, as part of the budget process, the city council will establish time periods. So every
so that's-
budget, so every time we set the budget, at that time, we will determine the time periods.
Right. So I'm recommending that we do the time periods 2 times a year.
But we can establish that each year during the budget process. Because what if we say 2 years and then we come to realize that we should do it three times?
Right, but we're talking about fairly and responsibly. Didn't we just have the conversation at the beginning of this meeting where we keep arguing that somehow we're going to have a new council that's not going to be fair and equitable to all these individuals? So if it's in here that it's 2 times a year, it's equitable, it's in the policy, it's unchangeable unless they decide to change this policy again.
So one suggestion on to that point is that if you establish a time period like twice a year and then you get to the middle of the year and you decide, oh, we should have really made it 3 times a year, I think it would be a lot easier to do a simple amendment to this than to have one more step when you're doing your budget to decide this number. So you can always change anything that you establish.
Okay.
And I think it would be, you can accomplish the same goal and it might be easier.
Okay.
And if we put at the discretion of the council, that gives the leeway for that council to change the time period.
Okay, let's do that.
Well, I have something to say. I feel when it comes to sports, they should get 1 donation per season. That's what they do? Okay, good. And then with schools, I can see that's different because they have activities throughout the year, and we could help throughout the year, no problem. But when it comes to sports, I think 1 donation per season would be great.
And what's a season?
A season is from this period to this period. Like,
It's a year, right?
yeah.
Well, it depends on the sport. You know, sports like baseball at one season, football is another one, and so on. So,
Right.
like right now, we're into baseball.
But
Of
the
course,
season-
soccer is all year round.
Oh.
Soccer is all year round, but so.
Mr. Rodriguez, could I interject here for a moment, please? Right now, we give each group, the Little League, soccer, and the Pop Warner, receive 1 donation per year. That's all they get. I know that soccer always asks for 10,000 because they are year-round, but that's the discretion of the council if they choose to give it. Anything above and beyond, that's when they, like the donation to the Little League for the golf tournament, that was something separate. But they only get 1 donation per year, as do the schools, and the only schools at this point that get donations, the $5,000, are schools that have science camps, which is Ferguson and Hawaiian. Melbourne doesn't get a donation because Melbourne doesn't have a science camp. And that's how the policy is written at this time. So they don't come constantly and ask for donations. And those are the only donations that have been pretty much set in stone as far as giving out. The other donations are the people that come to the podium and ask for things, and then that's up to the discretion of the council.
And the golf tournament, if I understand correctly, was not a donation. It was a contribution to the golf tournament in exchange for players.
That's correct.
So it wasn't even, it's not even under
It's
the
not-
same
yeah,
language.
No, it's not.
Can I ask a question?
Well, when the following meeting, when Hawaiian came for their science camp, we had no money.
Well,
Well,
we
got
had nothing
money,
budgeted.
not in the budget.
We
So it
hadn't
looks-
budgeted in that
Thank God that
line
wasn't
item.
on the last council that made this budget that failed, but this council's budget is not going to fail.
What do you
because
mean
we're
the
gonna be
budget
fairly-
failed? There's a
They
surplus
ran
in
out
the
of money.
budget.
They failed. There's only one way to say it. I'm sorry.
Mr. Tremble, there
It
is no
failed.
line item for this donation policy. What is it that you're talking about? There was
What?
not a limit. There's not, I don't know what you're talking about.
This year, we'll be right on time.
What you had last year was a line item that was put in there called advertising and promotion. And what was said was, well, we use that for donations, but there was no real thought put into how much do we want to donate throughout the year. So that wasn't part of the budgeting process. I don't think that was even considered. So it didn't fail so much as it just wasn't part of what was thought of during that process. And now you're trying to correct that and to allow enough. So at the beginning of the year, what you're saying is, we want to help out. Our budget allows us to donate this much. We're putting this much in a pot for donations. Now, you don't have to use every bit of that. You may have that year that you don't get enough people that need it, and so you have money left over. But you know what you want to be able to give. And I think that is a real nice thing for the community to see, that this is how much you're willing to donate to organizations.
And that's going to be something new this year, that there will
Yes.
be an actual limit. There will be
That-
an actual pot of money which will be depleted.
They do not have in
With
here, I don't
proper
think,
paperwork, with proper writings, findings, forms,
yeah.
you know.
We don't
that's-
have a
That's-
maximum listed in here per organization, do we? I don't
Miss-
see a maximum per organization. I know I've heard 5,000, but I don't see that in here, and that was one of the things in here is that would be established. So I don't know if, like with the time periods, you want to establish a maximum per organization as part of this policy?
I personally would not. It depends on what the purpose is.
It depends on the purpose.
I mean, if you're talking
We
about,
know that the schools, they get their 5,000.
but it's not part of this policy. That's
Yeah,
a
this
different
is
policy, Mr.
nonprofits.
Rodriguez.
So this would be like the sports teams are mostly the nonprofits you get now.
Yeah, the only ones that we have is that. the
So
sports
do
teams.
you want to establish a maximum amount? What we have in here is language that says that each year you, as part of the budget, you determine how much the maximum is. But do you want to just include that in this policy, like Kendra was saying, and make it simpler to then just change it later if you need to?
Well, let's stick with the $5,000 donation per season
But we're not limiting that to
for sports. Schools are different.
50C3. What is the definition of a 50C3?
They have certain qualifications established by the IRS that they have to comply with.
So what is that definable?
Let me
well,
look it up.
I can tell you.
There's all types. It's not just sports. There's education nonprofits. There's health nonprofits. There's food people nonprofits. There's like a gamut of people who are nonprofit organizations that are approved by the states. All these individuals will be able to apply for these funds.
So
May I? The most common type of nonprofit organization falls under category 501c3, whereby a nonprofit organization is exempt from federal income tax if its activities have the following purposes: charitable, religious, educational, scientific, literary, testing for public safety, fostering amateur sports competition, or preventing cruelty to children or animals.
So that's what they're not. You're right. Is that what you just said?
That's what they are. They're tax
They are.
exempt.
Okay,
So-
so can we go back to the 2 times a year? Is that like something feasible?
So what if
And then at the discretion of the council?
we build into the resolution or ordinance 2 times a year, and we give a 15-day or 30-day window to apply, then we can discuss the review process separately. But then that would be already in the ordinance. It can be advertised on the city's website, but it would be there and it would be consistent. And then if you want to change it to 3 times a year, we do the same thing. January 1st to January 30th is the application date, and then July 1st to July 30th is the application date. So every year it's the same thing, and then the organizations should know what they have coming up, if it's football season or if it's baseball season, or if the Girl Scouts have something that they want a donation for, that they can anticipate 6 months ahead of time and plan their application. And then that way it's already established and they don't have to constantly watch for an advertisement.
Right. I mean, if it's changed every year, it's like, what's happening?
When it comes to donations like that, they find out in 1 hour, everybody knows about it. I mean, as far as advertisement, you don't have to worry about that. They'll know exactly when they can apply for.
So I'm glad, so we don't have to spend that money.
So you
No,
could,
we shouldn't. Like you said, just put it on the website, have
And
some
the
flyers out
newsletter.
here on the desk, and like I said, the whole community will know exactly.
and the newsletter, you can
When
put
it
it
comes
out
to
in.
money, they know. So we shouldn't worry about that.
So that eliminates number 3.
So should we establish, though, the time period and the period to accept applications?
I mean, if we're intent on doing that, I would say 2 times a year. I don't know about 15 days to apply. I think it should be more of a month. That would
30.
be more equitable, since we're using equitable language. Because 15 days is just a quick turnaround. So a month after
Well,
the budget.
how many nonprofits do we really have? We don't have that
I don't
really
know,
that
but
many.
we're creating a policy for all these new nonprofits we're going to
But
create.
it sounds here like we're opening it for nonprofits out of the city, and we don't have that many nonprofits in the city.
I am with you on
Besides-
this one.
Besides our sports, like you said, all our sports, they automatically get that money. They know when to apply. We don't have to tell them. They already know. They'll be calling Sue over here every day. But I agree. I think we should just have it twice a year, especially during budget session, because that's when we do have. In June, we have a budget session, and we're supposed to have one now, aren't we?
You have one in May.
Yeah.
So we can-
So we know how much money we have in the kitty for that particular 6 months, and then the ones that are eligible for the 6 months, they'll get that. And then the other ones will have to wait until the next 6 months to get there.
So is it okay to say 2 times a year, applying in June and January? Would we already know by June or July?
We don't, the budget doesn't.
July
The
1st.
budget doesn't have to be adopted till June 30th.
Okay, so then
So-
July, so the people will apply in July and in January. Does that
Well,
seem
they
reasonable?
could start applying June 1st, and they have 30 days to apply. In July, we have our meeting.
I feel more comfortable doing it in July because June 30th, that's when we set our budget. So we'll know for sure how much we have, and we can advertise it in July.
So they can apply July 1st through July 31st, and then you can determine in August.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they'll have January 1st to January 31st determined in February.
Yes.
Okay.
Number 9 says that the list of funding will be finalized within 60 days. So if we're talking for about a 30-day advertisement period and then up to a total of 60-day review period, we're already talking 3 months into
So we're not
the year.
there. I don't know if we're going to keep.
Yeah, I don't know,
everything
we
there.
haven't even,
Yeah.
we haven't
haven't gotten
approved
that
that
far.
part. So we're just going down one item at a time. So, number 1,
So we're on number 4 now.
correct?
For
As I understand
clarification,
it.
Application may be submitted at any time during the period of up to the established date. Of course, we just decided to have it,
Yeah, so that's not needed anymore.
so it's not needed. No.
July and,
They can be submitted anytime. They don't have to wait till July 31st. They can submit anytime during that period.
Yeah.
They can submit July
The whole month of
1st.
July.
Yeah, the whole month of July. So they can submit anytime during that period.
but I thought the whole point of this is to have a specific window of opportunity for people to apply and not necessarily have them come to the council anytime during
No,
the
they
year.
can apply. They can turn in their application anytime during that month.
Well, they can hold off, yeah, during July and
No, and all of the months of July, anytime during that month, they can bring and turn it into the city clerk.
Right, during July
Yeah,
and January.
right.
Correct. So
So
that's already
anytime.
covered. Yeah, we're talking the same thing, Linda.
Then we shall proceed for item number 5. Councilmember Mayra, would you please read number 5?
Sure. Applications. Applications are to be submitted using the city donation request form. All sections must be completed with required support documentation. Applications will be received and date stamped by the city clerk, then reviewed by the finance director to assure completeness. Incomplete applications will be returned to applicant to allow the applicant an opportunity to complete the package and resubmit up to the close date of the application period.
Actually, this probably would require an extension, right? So if I submit my application July 31st and it happens to be incomplete, then I'm out of luck.
It's rejected. Yeah, but they submit it on July 2nd, and we find out it's incomplete, and there is time to get it back to them and call them up and say, you know what, this is incomplete. Give them another opportunity to complete it in time for the deadline.
So,
Well, if it's a nonprofit who's asking for money, I'm pretty sure they're not going to wait until the last day to put the application. If they do, well, then they're lost.
Yeah.
so can we indicate here that applications, all sections
think
must
we
be
should have
completed,
it-
required, applications received by the instant, opportunity to.
We just put a deadline, and
complete
if they
application.
don't submit by the deadline, and then they're
Okay.
lost.
If it's not within the window of time, they can resubmit for the next funding cycle.
Yes.
That could clarify the language for them.
And that's what it says. They can resubmit during the next period.
But it doesn't, it says, the incomplete applications will be returned to the applicant to allow the applicant an opportunity to complete the package and resubmit. If I'm submitting it July 31st, I'm not going to have time to resubmit.
That's true, that's true.
Mr.
So-
Rodriguez?
Yes, ma'am.
Like I said with our fireworks, we do not accept any applications that are not totally complete. We have a list on the front page of everything they have to submit their application, and if something is missing, we don't accept it. May 2nd is our deadline. May 1st is actually our deadline for fireworks stands. And people come in on May 1st, and if they don't have everything submitted, I'm sorry, we don't give it to them. If they got time to go and get it, but we won't even take it. We will review it, and we won't even take it at that point unless it's totally complete. And this could work with this also. We just have a list of what they have to have, which is in the application. But when you do a list with it, then they remember it, checklist, and then they remember to bring it. So that might be something that would be beneficial to anybody that is applying for a donation.
Actually, I see the language, resubmit up to the close date of the application period. So actually, that takes care of it. If it's not done before the close date, it's pretty much incomplete. Right, so we don't have to change the language. It seems that it's there. Right? The
It's
last
all there.
sentence,
Yep.
Yes.
resubmit
And-
up to the close date of the application period.
And above it, number 4 says they can resubmit during the next period as well. So I think that answered both those questions. It's just whether or not you want them to be able to submit something that's potentially incomplete, or if you want staff to check in immediately with a checklist and not accept anything that is incomplete.
No, we
Still
deleted
has to
number
be
4.
checked.
We
It
didn't-
still has to be checked. I mean, you have a checklist and you guys get it, so we could, in fact, ask you to check the checklist. What I was thinking more was that we would just go through and do the check and review it and make sure it's okay, and then we can give it back.
The reason for that coming about with fireworks, for example, that kind of, learn as we go, is that we were having organizations that submitted stuff, and it seemed like they were complete, and they were not. So we took the time to have that checklist available, and we would not accept it. I mean, there's still obviously review that goes on afterwards, but that doesn't disqualify them. In this case, it would disqualify them if they're missing something. And if you do have somebody or staff can't get to the review period, then the onus may fall on the city's behalf instead of the applicant.
Who reviews yours for completeness? Do the people come in and hand it to you and they stand and wait until you've
Yes.
checked it?
Yes, because we have the checklist. It's
So
the checklist
someone-
and the application go together, and any submittals are part of the application itself. And then we just go down the list. If something is missing, we do not accept it. If it's in there, even though there may be concerns about it, they're actually in there, and we timestamp it and everything to make sure because it was a problem for fireworks application because there were things that were incomplete when the package came to us, and then it did not allow for us to provide that opportunity to go back and forth.
So if we provided a checklist, we could have them turn it into the city clerk's office. You could verify what they're correct or not, and have them meet with you and find out if they're complete, and then send them back if they weren't.
This becomes our process, yes.
Well, we could do that because you would be
able
able to maybe meet with them more easily than say, unless I had somebody on staff that we put on board for that. You're going to date stamp them, they're coming into you. If you had a checklist.
I would defer to our city clerk because that's not currently in our department. This has always been through the city manager's office, and it hasn't been to this, this is a whole new process that we're all kind of learning.
So would we take the city clerk out, the date stamping with the city clerk, and have that go to someone else for date stamping?
I don't know if we would want to get, my city clerk. Just say that language.
I think we should just strike out city clerk and put, maybe we can put city clerk or designee.
Applications will be received and date stamped.
Maybe city manager or designee, because then
city manager or designee.
It can be, and yeah.
Yeah, city manager or designee.
Going back to number 4, we had already deleted number 4, so that's not even part of the language right now.
Okay.
No, we did?
Yes. We deleted 3.
I didn't think we did.
And we're altering 2.
We deleted number 4, we deleted number 3. And we revised number 2.
Number 4, the section in there says applications will not be accepted after the due date, but may be resubmitted the next period. Maybe you want to put that down in number 5, something that indicates they're not going to be accepted and they can be resubmitted.
Well, we already indicated that they will only be accepted during January and June. I mean, July. July and June, that's the only, weren't we very specific? That they were only going to be accepted during July and June, and that's it? So there's no applications that are going to be hanging out anywhere other than those time periods.
But I think number 4 is self-explanatory. It tells you exactly what, what they should know. Like Linda says, they can reapply if they were not eligible say in June, then they can reapply in January. And that's what this sentence says. That's what this paragraph says.
Number 4 says they can be submitted at any time.
During the time period.
During the time period.
Which is...
Well, then let's be specific. During during July and January. I mean, it seems redundant if we already accept it. We can add, after number 5, we can add applications will not be accepted after due date of a specific donation period, but may be resubmitted to the next period. The second sentence would be fine to add after number 5.
Why are we getting rid of number 4? Number 4 is pretty easy.
You want?
I think we're including part of number 4, but getting rid of the first part just because we're already saying when they can be submitted. So So we'll keep the part about how they can resubmit, but we'll get rid of the redundancy with that they can be submitted anytime during the period.
And it makes sense to me to add it after number 5. How is my application going to be reviewed, and what happens if it's not accepted? I can resubmit again.
So where are we at number 5 then?
We're done.
We're done. So we're going to add that the period may be resubmitted during the next period,
right.
On number 5, and eliminate that. Okay, let's go to number 6. After the close of the submission period, all requests will be reviewed by the finance director and the city manager or designees for eligibility. A report of eligible applicants, amount requested, summary of project to be funded, and available budget will be developed. for presentation to the Finance Commission. The commission membership is described in section 6.
I believe this is work of the council. I mean, we just have to review, approve, and that's pretty much it. I don't see why we need to add a whole new step of a commission. If you have a commission, there will need to be members selected. There will need to be the stipend that is indicated. I mean, we're only doing this 2 times a year. We're already doing it already. We review the applications and approve them or not. So just revising that to say, the report of all eligible applicants, amount requested, summary of project to be funded, and available budget will be presented to the council during the month of February. Or, well, no, don't you guys need time to review it? Yes. So I would say during the month of March. Or let's not even put a time period. Will be presented to the council. If there's quick work, it could be done in February. You know, we don't have to wait until March. And if you're overloaded, then that gives you a little bit more leeway.
I would appreciate having a little bit of leeway just in case.
Available budget will be presented directly to the council.
So are you suggesting that we really don't need a commission?
I really do not believe we do.
I kind of agree with you on
Thank
that.
you.
Because it's going to create more. I mean, it'll be hard to get anybody from a community to process this. This is pretty difficult because they're going to be put on they're going to be put on the
spot
against the wall there if they don't agree, and it's just going to create more paperwork and so I think us as the council
and as
should be able to do it like we did before.
And when we review, it's public content. It's televised to the community to see how the proceeding is handled, and it will be viewed again fairly and what's our new word? Responsibly. So thank you.
You have any comments, Myra, on this?
Nope.
How about you, Mr.
Well, I like
Trimble?
getting rid of the commission, and I like making the decision on council.
Okay.
But we'll let
council.
We'll let staff review and then recommend to us, and we'll make the final decision.
So, Mr. Rodriguez, if it's okay with you, then that deletes number 7, 8, 9.
Yes, because it's all part of the commission.
It's all the commission issue.
Yes.
10.
Would that be acceptable or?
Oh, yes, that was fine. That was part of the committee's discussion and review. They were discussing having that kind of a review group, a commission, a committee, someone review. So it was an attempt, I think, to expand the review process. But that, whatever the council decides is fine. Councilmember Maravilla, did you have any input on that one?
No.
Do you? I mean, because from the committee, so many things happened. I'm trying to remember all the details.
Can we move then to number 10?
Okay, so we're good up until number 9 then.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we'll go to item number 10. Approved recipients will be notified by the city clerk and invited to a future council meeting for awarding the donations. When accepting the donations, organization will provide a brief statement and so on. We've been doing that anyway, right?
City clerk or designee.
Yeah. Yeah, we have been doing that, so there's no change there.
So we shouldn't do or designee? Okay.
It doesn't matter. Number 11, the city clerk's office will prepare requisitions for checks to be processed by the finance director.
No, just by finance.
Okay, by finance
Finance
for
department.
presentation of the appropriate council meeting. So I don't think there's nothing to change there. Number 12, if all funds are not distributed for a donation period, these funds may be added to the next period within the fiscal year, thereby increasing the amount of availability for distribution to that cycle. Funds will not carry over into the next fiscal year. I don't think we're going to have a problem with that.
Can you read that again? What is it? I think I have a problem.
If all
with
funds are not distributed for a donation period, these funds may be added to the next period within the fiscal year. thereby increasing the amount available for distribution for that cycle. And then it says funds will not carry over into the next fiscal year.
Okay, so thank you, that clarifies the end, yeah. I mean, if they're not used at the end of the year, then that's
We'll just carry.
done.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't carry over.
Well, okay, at the beginning it will, but then after
Yeah.
that it won't.
Right, okay.
I do have a question on this, just to clarify on number 2. There was going to be 2 times a year with the amount split equally, right? The
Yes.
amount that was decided.
And with number 12, if the funds are not used at the beginning of the year, they would just add the pot at the next fiscal time.
But at the beginning.
But at the end of the budget season, that money is gone.
But at the beginning, we're dividing it in half. So if you decide 200,000, it's 100,000 each period.
Correct. Wow, that would be amazing.
Unless we carry more over.
We're now at 15, and now we're talking
I'm
about
thinking
you.
big.
Okay, can we now make a motion to approve item number 4, procedures, and also eliminating the
Commission?
commission, which is item 6, 7, 8, 9.
I have one other question. Did we set a limit per organization officially in here?
No.
Are we setting a limit
I
per
don't-
organization?
I don't believe so, because it's the same thing. It could go higher or down. You know what I
Okay,
mean? It
so
depends
no-
on the
no
need
limit
of the
because-
organization.
There's discussion about 5,000. We don't have it
5,000 for
anywhere.
sports,
Yeah.
the donation, 5,000 for sports per season. And
Is
then,
that written into the policy?
well, that's what
think-
we can do now. That's
Isn't that in the
been
old
past
policy?
practice.
No.
No, but I think that if you're at the point that you're pinpointing a specific organization, you're not being fair. And remember,
Well,
we're supposed to be
schools are
fair and
different
equitable.
from,
No, you're not, Mr. Trimble. We're not talking
okay,
about.
then
only-
let's do all nonprofits $5,000, because she's saying educational purposes and other.
Right. The
Yes.
CBOs can be any type of.
Yes, that's
And I'm
true. Okay,
arguing
then I
with you-
shouldn't have just say, I was only thinking sports and schools, but there's more nonprofits. So I say $5,000 limit on the nonprofits.
And I would urge you not to, because it depends on the project. If you're feeding the homeless, that's the intent of the nonprofit.
Nonprofits have fundraisers. They don't just feed off the city of Hawaiian Gardens. We're going to help them out. $5,000 to feed the homeless is a big help. $5,000 for books is a big help. But they also have fundraisers. And that brings them together. That's what makes the bond, is raising it, is working it.
Do you mean per cycle or per fiscal year?
I think we're talking about fiscal year, right?
Yeah, it should be fiscal year.
Fiscal year.
It's just like we've been doing now. You
Yeah.
know, we were giving the schools for science camp 5,000. We give the Little League 5,000. We give the football 5,000, and so on. It shouldn't, you know, I don't know what else we can do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Again,
but
I say-
it's not written here though, right?
But we
don't
will
have
write
that.
it now.
So
We're going to
it's
put
gonna
it down
have
on
to be
paper.
added to the.
It's not in either policy, but it has been a practice. So it seems like if we're developing the policy, if that's what you want, if that's what the council wants to do, it should be written in. If that's not what you want to do, that's fine. I just want to make sure before we move on that we've not just continue a practice without having addressed it in the policy.
Exactly. So let's write
I
it.
think that the 5,000 that were requested is the amount that the group themselves requested. It's not an amount that is needed by the people. So if they need more, they should have that discretion of what is it that's needed. I mean, in terms of to you, 5,000 may seem a lot. To that group, the particular project requires a lot more.
But
I don't
forget
think that we should. I
these
mean, we're
are-
going to be reviewing
If we
applications.
leave it open, they're going to definitely need more.
Oh, everybody
They're
will be
gonna
asking
definitely
for
need
more,
more.
no matter what.
Well, that's when
Yeah,
we review
and
the
that's when we gotta be
applications and determine the amount.
fairly and
If we have a
responsible
determined amount
with
already,
city
then
funds.
that's all they're going to expect, and that's all they're going to apply for. Because otherwise, they're going to, of course, everybody needs more money than what they. But I think it's policy, or we should be doing the same as we have been doing the last 8 years that I know of.
But we're
5,000 for each individual and nonprofit, and that should be it. I mean, I know some of them will come and ask for $10,000. We have one, remember the Pop Warner or the Eagles that wanted $10,000? So,
But at that point, if you
We-
remembered, we changed it as a council. So, I mean,
but we shouldn't be going through all that. We shouldn't
Yeah.
be going through every council meeting and going through this whole thing again, because we're gonna end up with discussions and some that we don't really need. Okay, if they're only qualified for 5,000 as what they have been, then we just donate the 5,000 and that eliminates all the fighting in the council because somebody wants more, and then the other nonprofit wants. Well, if they get in more than $5,000, then we want more than $5,000. So we set a policy, and that's where we just stick with it. I think that's pretty generous of us to give them that much money. We don't even have to give them that money, but so to eliminate all problems, I think we just to set a certain amount and for all nonprofits, and of course, like we have with the schools also. Their science camp is always $5,000 to help them, and there's,
that's true.
So, I think we need to set up a budget, because also for the budget we need to know exactly how much money we're going to require on the budget. So,
although it sounds great, I again argue, and this would be it in regards to the merit of the particular project that is being brought forward.
Like I said, we're not here to just give money out when somebody just asks for it.
I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I was going to make a motion, but if you're still talking, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were still talking.
I'm going to get reprimanded for that.
Okay, I know I am, sir.
I do all the time.
I'm sorry.
I'm still talking. Okay, Mr. Rodriguez, sorry. There's like a lapse there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Rodriguez. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm finished.
I'd like to make a motion to put a cap on the donation policy of $5,000 per nonprofit organization for fiscal year.
I'll second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm trying to find a word that we can use to say, like, unless there are excruciating circumstances that would dictate that we raise the limit.
If we do, there's not going to be no control. So it's if you are not decided, I guess it's going to be a deadlock, and we'll
table this.
We'll table that motion until the next meeting.
Okay.
So.
But we're not tabling it till the next meeting, Mr. Rodriguez, because we're taking time to discuss it here. So if the motion fails, then that's a moot point. That's it. We've made the decision here, and that's why we're staying here at this time to make.
But we're going to have to make a decision.
Right.
Regardless.
So there's a vote on the table. Can we continue with the vote?
But like I said, if
there's a motion, there's a second. We're doing a vote now,
yes.
as I understand. Mm-hmm. So there's 2 yes.
2 yes and
Unless there is a substantial reason for an increase, and I would like to make a friendly amendment.
If I might.
No, because if that's the case, and then we're defeating the policy of donating $5,000. Like I said, everybody's going to have some kind of financial deal where they'll be asking for more, and then we're going to lose control, because if we do it for one nonprofit, the rest of the nonprofits are going to follow through. So,
point of clarification: isn't the friendly amendment made to the maker of the motion? So, isn't the maker of the motion? Doesn't that person need to approve or disapprove?
The maker and the person who seconded would have to accept the friendly, but you could also. But
it's the maker of the motion first, right?
Yes.
Because of the person, then there's no point in the second saying anything.
Who made the motion?
I made the motion.
So I'm basically saying that, yes, the limit will be 5,000 unless there is Can anybody help me out?
Demonstrate a substantial need.
Yeah, unless they demonstrate substantial need for an increase.
What would you consider substantial?
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's our discretion.
That's
So, for
discretion.
instance, say somebody comes in and says, oh my gosh, 10 kids from our group of this nonprofit just got invited to go to the White House, and we need to fundraise $6,000, and this is the last minute thing. We would really like your support. At that moment, I would say, wow, that's pretty substantial.
But don't forget the budget. Are we going to be within the budget that we allocated for?
But that's
for
why
the nonprofits?
we would determine that if it's worth it or not.
If we do that, then somebody else is going to miss out.
No, because we're going to
Because-
review them all at the same time. So we can say, wow, that's very substantial. Let's decrease this amount, or everybody still gets what they need, or... I would like that option because we just never know. And it's easier to make that determination when the time comes than it is to say, hold on, let's go ahead and make an amendment to this policy. Now let's go ahead and look at this application.
Well, if you're saying this, let me get this clear. We're going to put down per fiscal year $5,000 per nonprofit and set that in stone. And then we're going to be saying if a championship team or a member gets to go play at the Olympics, that they could come up and present this issue to us, and then we'll make that decision at that time. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that the limit is $5,000 unless a nonprofit demonstrates a substantial financial need that would increase it to a higher amount.
No.
So we're deadlocked
So
right
there's-
now. Two yes and two no. So
You guys are really no?
So, huh?
Yeah.
You guys are voting no on
Well, yeah.
my friendly amendment?
Yes.
So then the vote continues, right?
But we're deadlocked, so
Mayor
what are we
Pro
going to
Tem?
do in this case like this?
Well, someone can make a substitute motion, or we can.
But the vote hasn't, I have not rendered a vote.
We can finish the vote. Although
I mean, we haven't finished the vote. I
The
mean, and there's
motion
a
was
list-
to cap out at $5,000 per nonprofit per fiscal year.
Right, so
Right.
there's a
There's a
amendment, it
motion
was
and a
denied.
second.
Yes.
You're
Friendly.
ready the meeting, so we'll continue with the vote?
You have a motion
Yes.
and a second on the original vote, and the vote at this
So-
point was 2 ayes, and that we hadn't heard from.
Well, let's take a roll call.
Okay. Councilmember Rios,
No?
Councilmember Tremble,
Yes.
Councilmember Maravilla,
No.
Yes.
Councilmember
Oh,
Rodriguez.
sorry.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Motion fails.
I would like to make a motion that the amount be limited to $5,000 unless a nonprofit can demonstrate substantial financial need.
It was the same motion you just did.
Well, it could be on record that we voted
well.
that one down because you guys did not accept my friendly
Let's-
amendment.
Let's take a roll call. Oh,
There's no
anybody second it?
Just to clarify, so you're saying that amount can be increased if?
The amount can be increased at the discretion of the council if the nonprofit can demonstrate substantial financial need.
Well, financial need is already demonstrated when they're applying.
But if
so-
it's substantial, that means that they cannot fundraise for whatever reason, or they need the money urgently, or that's up at our discretion.
Well, one of the problems with that is they're going to need to work hard to
If you don't want to have a cap.
yeah. So, well, actually, what we're doing is taking off the cap. So, you want to
Only if they demonstrate
well,
substantial financial need.
So, are we going to take a vote on that again, or
Excuse
what?
me, could I get a clarification? If it's only twice a year that you can put in your applications, so is your vote so that if they have, during that cap time of the time of putting in the application, that is when they have to show that extraordinary thing, or is it, or are you saying like they could come at some other time to ask for funds? I got confused.
I guess you just brought up a good point. That, you know, if there is a nonprofit that has excruciating financial need and it's out of the cycle, what do we do? Do we just ignore it? And I would like that option. So maybe it could be a clause in here if a nonprofit demonstrates substantial financial need that we would even consider it out of cycle, because you just never know.
Well, there's no sense in even putting a $5,000 cap if that's what's going to happen, because they will come. and they will ask for more financial aid. And that's not what we're here for. We're here to donate money to them. They raise money. They have, they sell hot dogs or whatever it is. They have money. And so now we're going to increase it per, like I said, if one gets it, they're all going to ask for the same thing. So therefore, I think we just put the $5,000 on them, and that's it.
At this point, as I understand our application and where we're going, there is no discretionary language in here that if these community organizations do not apply in July, they do not apply in January, there is no discretionary language that we can go ahead and grant any other monies any other time during that fiscal. And it seems clear, and please verify the language, that all these community organizations can only apply one time a year.
Twice.
No, only one
Once.
time. One time a year.
One per
So-
nonprofit.
Oh, yeah.
You can choose to say once that they can apply once a year, or that they could have a cap for the fiscal year if they want to apply twice for $1,000 in January and $4,000 in July. They could do it either way. It's up to you. If you want to say they can only apply once a year, that's fine too.
As I understand, the cap has been voted down, so we're not even talking about that anymore. But as I understood, they could only apply one time a period, right?
The cap has not been voted down.
We did.
Yeah.
There was a vote,
It was
$5,000.
Huh?
It's mute.
No, it was.
It didn't make it into
It
the
didn't make
policy.
it. I mean, we have a cap of 5,000.
No, we don't.
No, we do not.
There's no
Motion
existing
failed.
cap in the policy.
I was trying to
The
help you out,
motion
Mr.
was
Rodriguez.
two yes and two no. That means the motion failed.
Okay, so where are we at now?
Ms. Maravilla
I was trying to
made a
help you
motion.
out by adding a little bit of language to still keep it 5,000 unless they demonstrate substantial financial need.
Well, but like I said, I think we should keep the cap, and it failed because we're locked, right?
Yep.
So now you're.
I'm trying to motivate you.
But what we're doing, we're opening up a can of worms because everybody's going to be asking more than what they.
If they just come up here and say, I want $10,000, and we'll say why. And if they say, well, we'll say, sorry, $5,000 unless you can demonstrate substantial financial need. That's it.
Can we go ahead and continue on to number 10 then? No, we already did number 10. We already did number 11.
We have a motion on the floor that hasn't been seconded, so motion fails.
It's
No,
not
it's
seconded.
It hasn't been seconded.
Do we have a motion? No.
It wasn't seconded.
Okay, one other question that was raised by the Assistant City Clerk here. I had forgotten about this, but one of the things that we had in language in number 7 that had been put in there is if the total that's requested that exceeds the budgeted amounts, this was going to be the commission, but in this case it would not be the commission, it would be the reviewing finance and city manager, will determine if reduced amounts will be given or if some applicants will receive no funding during the period. That being that if you had $10,000 for the cycle and you had $15,000 in requests, you would look at those requests and maybe prorate that $10,000 among those organizations. So they wouldn't all get their full amount, but they would get some. Or maybe you would find one that you would determine could wait for some reason to the next period and you give everybody what they need. If anyone is rejected during that cycle, they could reapply. But that was to put some ability to prorate those amounts if you get requests for more than you have available for that quarter or that cycle.
That's already established.
Well, it's in number 7, but we
number
crossed
7 was
out number
deleted.
7, yeah.
No, but with prior language, we've already established that. If they don't submit in time, they can be passed over to the previous cycle. We cannot spend more than the cycle has been allocated. So it's up to the council to decide how we're going to allocate that money when all the applications are submitted to issue that money.
So we would bring that back to council and just give you all of the information, and you would then decide how much each of them would get
Correct.
within that budget amount? Okay.
I mean, that's what we agreed to.
Is that language in there?
So we're on number 11?
Do we, I think you were trying to
Additional
vote to
requirement.
determine whether this entire section was acceptable to everyone.
So we're going to vote on this entire section here then?
We did. I thought we voted on the whole thing.
Okay.
The whole thing?
We're
Yes.
just, yeah, we've been doing it by consensus, right?
No, actually, you did not vote on that. You were voting
No, we
on
haven't- we
the
haven't
the limit. So this is, you need to vote on this section now.
So with the changes, without any cap currently, the twice a year, 2 months, and then the remainder of the language as stated, with it coming to
So we're
council
gonna
and not a
keep,
commission.
we're going to keep Myra's,
No, we're not.
If you vote, I mean,
No.
I can make the motion if you want me to. If you want to
well, like I said,
reconsider.
I'm total 100% for a cap and that's it. So I don't know where are we at on that?
Well, that failed. That failed.
That
So
failed.
we're continuing
So I was
on
trying to
the next page. Oh, no,
help
we're
you
going to
out.
make a motion to accept.
But I don't want.
Do we have?
I'd like to make a motion to accept
I'm
number 4.
Just a quick question before your motion. You are specifying the months of July and January?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Trimble.
No problem.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept section 4 procedures.
Actually,
Do we have a
section
second?
5 procedures,
Well, section 4 is written.
as written, okay, because we added that other.
I second
As
that.
discussed.
Okay, Myra seconds it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we're going to go to additional requirements. Organizations that do not comply with these additional requirements may be ineligible for future donations or may be required to refund the money so that they have received. So that's standard, isn't it, from the last, from the old policy?
Let's see.
What are you asking about?
Item number 5, first.
Additional requirements?
Yes.
No, because this is different. The previous policy said that you got the funding by submitting receipts, receipts and getting reimbursed. So what this was an attempt to do an after check kind of thing, which is to follow up to make sure that the funds that they requested are used the way they applied for them, that they may be asked, that they'll be asked to provide subsequent financial information to show how those funds were used, and they may not be transferred to another organization. And then one of the other ones was to have them do a presentation at the council to show how the donation was used. So those were some additional things that were brought in.
Do we have any comments on?
I do. I have a problem with number 4, and that is fine if it's a recurring request. So if they request it every year, I would hope that maybe that could just be added as part of the application process. If you are applying again, how was your money used the last funding cycle? Instead of having them all come back again and making a presentation. We already have tons of presentations. So they come up forward whenever they're presenting an application to justify their application. So that could be just added to the application process and deleted from here.
If I might speak up on this, we in the past have asked, like when the schools go to science camp, they come and give a video presentation of some of the things they did there to show
Right.
where the money was spent. And actually, the Little League has wanted to do a little presentation. I don't know if they're going to do it now, but on the golf tournament where the money had gone,
Mm-hmm.
so that the council and people see that the money is being spent for the residents.
Right. And I love that. But I'm saying if, like, when I'm applying again, it's justifiable for me to see, well, this is how you did it last year. It's wonderful what you did, and it justifies your application for it next year. You know what I mean? Instead of just coming out here blank cold, and then there's no other, Is that something agreeable with everyone?
So, is there any more questions, or can we proceed with this discussion? Or is this
I-
pretty
Can that just be added
self-explanatory?
to a question?
Councilmember Rios made the
Uh-huh.
suggestion that number 4 be removed from this list and instead be added to the application itself, so that if someone is a repeat requester, then they have to explain how they used the funds in the previous year.
Yeah, or bring a presentation like Sue is saying, you know, bring some of the slides and see how wonderful it is. I love that.
Well, I was present, was it last year? No, in fact, was it this year? Man, my mind is going. But when Frank Amaro got his supplies, he's got his uniforms, all kinds of baseball equipment. And I seen him bring the boxes in, they got loaded. So things like that is what we need.
So would you like to have that requirement just say here that if you're requesting for a second time or a back-to-back fiscal years, then you provide some sort of presentation
Of how the
as to
funds
how
were
the funds were previously used?
Yeah. So we can see how those uniforms.
I have a question about number 2. Applications will be asked to provide subsequent financial information to support how the donated funds were spent to assure that they have been used as listed in the application. Does that mean that they're going to show us their financial statements? Does that mean it has to be reflected in their bookkeeping? I'm not quite sure.
You could have a requirement that they submit receipts for how, I don't know how, what you.
And then is that like 30 days after, 100 days
the
after?
event? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it would be.
Once again, I go back to the fireworks submittal application. They have to send us in August, after the fireworks are over, they have to send us a budget to show us exactly where they spent the money that they received from the fireworks stand here in the city. And we have a form that we send out to them that they have to, and we say if this form does not come back, you may not be eligible for a fireworks stand the following year.
Can we add that? Could we add applications will be asked to provide subsequent financial information within 30 days of the activity or event taking place?
Mm-hmm.
Failure to do so will result in possible elimination from future donations from the city.
Actually, under additional requirements, that's the first line, is that if they don't comply with these requirements, they may be ineligible for future donations or be asked to refund if it's found that they used the money, say, for something that was ineligible, not as they applied. You could, in fact, ask for them to refund that money because they didn't do what you asked or what they said they were going to do with it.
Isn't that already covered in regards to their presentation? They're going to show us what they did with the money? Do we really need to? That's like the same thing as receipts?
But the organization, you moved it up as part of the application process, right? This is not showing how they used it the year before.
Right.
Yeah. And this would be more in line with, which one are we talking about? If they didn't use them as they stated in the application, let's say you found out the next year, you could make them ineligible the following year or ask them to refund the money.
I agree with number 1. They must use the funds as they were requested.
In the
Number 3,
manner.
they may not be transferred to another organization, obviously. But applicants will be asked to provide subsequent financial information to support how the donated funds were spent. I mean, aren't we already covering that by requesting them to let us know when they apply next year?
If they apply next year.
Right, if they apply next year.
If not, then they can take $5,000, say they're going to use it for something, and then we never hear back from them again. That's kind of troublesome, isn't it?
You know, there has been problems in the past where there was twice that I know of where there was some of these nonprofits. Well, I don't know if it's 2 different ones, but they have but they have displays somewhere around $10,000, and so problems do come up like that. So that's why we make sure that we get confirmation on what they spend the money on.
It seems like also if the city provides a similar form, that would make it fairly easy for the applicant to fill out or the recipient to fill out after with the application or with the approval letter, whatever the vehicle is for letting them know, then if we provide them with that tool, then it shouldn't be overly complicated for them to explain what they spent it on.
But, but we're not asking for an explanation, we're asking for financial information. Isn't that like, to me, financial information means a receipt?
Well, for example, in our fireworks form, it's a fairly simple form that they can submit. They can submit their own, and it's like almost like a budget for that particular project that they identified for receiving the fireworks permit. So they'll put on there, for example, the amount that they spent on security, on additional supplies for their fireworks stand, generator, and then how much they actually netted and profited from the actual sales, and then what their total was. So that's how we put it. Right, and then it itemizes, a summary itemize of that list all of those items. So the generator, the security guard, whatever it is that they put.
And also in that form, it says how much they used, like for an after-school program for the children, or a summer program for the children. So that it's all itemized down there to show that the money, because they do lose. They don't get our fireworks stands make around 2,500, maybe 3,000. It used to be 7,000 and so on, but it's really gone down. But by the time they're done, and then they have to show exactly where they used it, like because we have the churches and ours fireworks stands could be, churches can have fireworks stands, and then it shows what all the profits were used for the kids, and then we put that in the file with their application, so that, and like this year when we get ready they're going to start bringing the applications in before May 2nd, and there's one that did not return that last year. And so that's going to be kind of an issue. And we send out reminder letters, and we sent out 2, and this person did not return. So that may be an issue this year. Not saying that they're not going to get a stand, because it goes to the council to choose that. But we do send out something, and like I said, we generate this. We've got it generated. We just mail it out, and then they usually mail it back in. If they don't, we send a reminder. It could be the same with this. So you can just mail out this, let them fill it out to show what it was used for.
If it's a form that's provided to them, I don't see a problem just completing it. So,
so how about applicants will be asked to provide subsequent financial information as described in the form provided, in the form that will be provided.
Described in the form provided prior to the end, or let's just put a date, prior to June 1st. So they submitted before, but not before June 1st. Is that reasonable?
I would just say within 30 days of the activity or whatever taking place.
But remember, we're doing 2 different cycles.
But just because you get the money in, say, August, doesn't mean that you're spending the money in August. You could be spending the money in November, so I would say within 30 days of when your activity takes place.
But you have to spend it within that budget cycle, so that gives you a little bit more leeway.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you would say
like
December 30th.
If I'm done with my activity, I'm like, yeah, I could submit it the next day, 30 days. But it has to be done before the beginning of the next fiscal year.
So people cannot apply for money in one budget cycle that will be spent in the next budget cycle. Is that what you're saying? So if I'm applying for money in August, I have to spend that money within that period. I cannot be. What if I want to spend it in January? But
I mean, you can't during that budget cycle, though. You have a whole year to spend it, or half a year if it's a second cycle.
Let me see if I understand what you're saying. That they can apply in, let's say they apply in July. By June 1st of the next year, this information has to be submitted. Right. If they apply in January, by June 1st, they have to submit this information. So everyone has to have everything in by June 1st, with the assumption that they will spend it during that time. Now, the only thing that I see as a potential issue is if somebody got it in January, but they weren't going to have their activity till July, but they didn't want to wait till July to apply because then they wouldn't have it in time for that activity.
Well, we
That
can-
would be the only time it would
Well,
be
we
an
can
issue.
provide that leeway before the beginning of the next, or be
They-
specific.
They could contact
I
you.
am within 30
you-
days of the activity taking place.
But see, how about if I decide to do the activity a year from now? I got the money this year, but I didn't use it this year.
Well, maybe that can be a part of the application process.
It is a part of the application process.
That it must take place within, no, I don't think so.
No, they don't
It's
have
not.
to show proof
But it's
until
gonna-
they apply again. Because
It
we're not
says-
going to give it to them again unless they show what they did with their last budget.
So
It
you
says
could-
applicants will be asked to provide financial support. What did you say? Through, as indicated in a form or something, right?
Yes, as applicants will be asked to provide subsequent financial information as provided, I'm sorry? Yeah, the city form provided to support how the donated funds were spent to assure that they have been used as listed in the application.
So we could add a line on the request form.
Yes.
That if you've not submitted if you received money in the previous fiscal year and you've not submitted your form that would, your financial form, explain why you haven't done that yet. So if their event hasn't occurred, like if their event is in July and they got money in January and they were planning ahead and responsible, then they could still apply in July for another event that's going to occur in December, but they would just have to say, our event is not until July and we'll submit thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, within a reasonable time.
Okay.
Right.
So are we saying within the fiscal year or within 30 days of the activity?
I would give it more than 30 days.
What
Because if I use my,
was the question about fiscal year?
Because, like, say, they might not spend that money the first 30 days. They might spend it a month later, 2 months later on equipment or whatever it is, so.
or if it's spread out in various events.
But the question was per fiscal year, correct?
When do you want them to submit the financial information?
How about a year from the allotment? So that saves your
I
time.
thought it was to be presented if they asked for more. So at the time that they're asking, they show what they did with the last donation.
It seems like if you put in that language so that what you're doing, then they send it out after and they get it in 30 days, but they know when that event is going to occur. It's on July 4th or up through July 4th. So they have a real time frame to work with. We don't have a time frame with these, and they could, in fact, have the event further along the line. So it seems like by asking them when if they fill out another application to make sure that that form has been submitted for their last application, that you've kind of taken care of the fact that if they didn't use it correctly, you're not going to give them any more. And they're done. They're ineligible. And it takes away some of the bureaucracy of trying to go back and figure out, did they have the event? Did they not have the event? What time did they have the event? And did we follow up with those guys when they had their event? And it starts getting kind of complicated in terms of how do you follow up on it. So tying it, I like the idea of tying it to the application just because it makes it simpler and we know we're going to follow up on it because we won't give them another amount of money until they've proven it to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just from a financial standpoint,
Right.
that makes sense to me. Whatever you guys think is appropriate, but that sounds good from a finance perspective.
Let's do it then.
That
Okay
sounds
just with
good
that?
from my perspective also.
That's fine with me.
So is it when they are submitting another request that they provide the presentation and financial records of how they spent the previous money?
Yes.
So
Okay.
tie into
Yes.
number 4, so remove it with the application process as well.
Yes, so I'll combine 2 and 4 and have it be part of the application.
Perfect.
Okay, item number 3, that's pretty self-explanatory. Funds may not be transferred to another organization. That's always been there, so. Item number 4, organization will provide a presentation to the council after the completion of the funded activity to share how the donation was used, and this is what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
We
Yeah.
already
And she's
submitted
going
to
to
the-
combine 2 and 4 together with language, and that'll be that.
So do I have a motion to approve item number 5, additional requirements?
Motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item number 6, of course, it doesn't pertain anymore.
No, can I
right?
motion to delete that whole section?
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we
Motion
take a
carries.
recess before we address the application portion? 5 minutes?
I have one suggestion about the application. Just since we are making all these changes, and Linda was involved with that other process, since this is really a product of what's required by the application, this may be easier for staff to work with, and we don't have an example of the fireworks information yet. It may be easier for staff to do this, and this doesn't have to be adopted as part of the resolution for the policy. This can be changed frequently based on need. So since you don't have to adopt this, we can bring this language back at the next meeting, and then also have a form ready. We can do the following. That's fine.
Right, no,
That's
it's
fine.
not going to be a week turnaround. I think everything's been submitted for the budget, for the agenda this time around.
Well, I kind of second
The
that
next
motion there.
appropriate meeting.
So do we all agree that they're gonna change the format, or they're gonna review it again?
Well, it seems that the application is going to go with the guidelines we just adopted, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yes.
No new changes will be added or deleted.
Yes.
Unless there's anything specific that someone has a concern about, I can create the resolution to incorporate all these changes and then look at the existing city documents to create an appropriate application using this form, but making any changes that to correspond with the changes that we've made tonight.
Yeah, again, I mean, I'm not familiar as to why we need a board of director or trustees. Why do we need their list?
What?
In the application process.
Yes, you had raised that. You did raise that question, and as we go through this, some of the things that were raised we can address as we go through the application.
Right, I mean,
That was discussed at the last meeting, and I made a note of that, but we haven't made any other changes to it. And since we're going to do this now, we can go through and take a look at
I'm just saying
those.
because of the note of bias, if we see the directors and we're like, oh, that person, we're supposed to be fair in terms of the need, the financial status. That's, I think, what we're looking at. Need and their financial standing. That's how we're awarding the money.
And as Kendra pointed out, because we made so many changes in the application, the procedures, the application will be sort of driven by what we put in those procedures. So there will be other changes that will be needed to be made.
I'm just concerned we'll have a drawn-out thing like today. Wanted to do as much as possible tonight, but if we're okay with that, I'm okay with that.
So,
Well, we got
did
the
a
main
lot.
body that went, so I have a motion to close this meeting now.